Imagine events so impossible, so perfectly timed across billions of light years, that they defy all logical explanation. For the next 3 hours, we're unearthing the universe's most jaw-dropping synchronicity. Get ready to question everything you thought you knew about chance and destiny. Let's start with first. Twin suns rising. At first light, the world pretends it is simple. A single edge of fire climbs the horizon. Birds remember their songs. Shadows grow obediently long. We count on this routine the way sailors count on the tide, the way sleepers count on waking. But on one morning that does not fit neatly inside the calendar, two strangers on opposite edges of Earth stepped out into the raw hush of dawn and saw the sky commit an error. The sun rose, and then it split. Two halves parted from a common blaze and climbed side by side, twinned, like a decision refusing to choose. Each stranger stood in their own silence, a continent and an ocean apart, and knew that nothing would ever look entirely trustworthy again. They did not know each other. They had never shared a language, a city, a breath. Yet later, when their stories are laid beside each other, the details match as if copied. The momentary dimming before the division, the thin seam of darkness like a healing scar between the two discs, the way shadows forked on the ground like branching rivers. One described fear, the other described beauty. But fear and beauty are often the same thing reflecting from different angles. What mattered was the precision. Two suns not overlapping, not blurred, but distinct, rising together as if the sky had opened a door onto another sky and let both come through. How do you carry a morning that unravels the ordinary? You test the obvious explanations until they fray. Fog illusions, ice halos, the mirage called Fata Morgana, names like bandages we press over the wound in reality. You tell yourself it was fatigue, tears in the eyes, a trick of weather rehearsed by time. But the mind, even when it wants to be soothed, knows the feel of a true bruise. These were not vague apparitions. They were clocks resetting themselves. They were twin lights seeding twin shadows, geometry becoming rumor in the language of stone. If you listen closely to the oldest stories, you realize the sky has threatened this before. Somewhere in the strata of myth, a hunter shoots down a second sun to spare the crops. Somewhere else, twins wrestle across the firmament, and one is swallowed to restore balance. We treat such tales like children's lanterns, pretty, harmless, hung at dusk. But what if they are field notes from mornings like this, left behind by witnesses who had no mathematics for what they saw? What if the world keeps a quiet ledger of divided dawns, rare but real, scattered across centuries like beads of dew on grass? The two strangers woke into that ledger by accident. One stood on a hill smelling of iron-rich soil and damp grass. The other stood on a balcony above a sleeping city, the air salted by a distant sea. In each place, dogs fell quiet, as if the ordinary programs of morning had paused for an update. For one of them, tears arrived unbidden, the kind that feel like the heart finally acknowledging its awe. For the other, the chest tightened, not with panic, but with the terror of being addressed by something vast. They both forgot their names for a minute. The world did not forget theirs. It rarely bothers to know. But for a minute, the world did something stranger. It spoke back. There is a possibility you will never fully accept and will never fully escape. That reality is porous, that the boundaries between histories thin at the edges of sleep, grief, love, and light. Perhaps on that morning, two tapes of the universe overlapped for a few frames, and both played. Perhaps a parallel Earth, where the sun routinely divides like a cell before recombining, brushed against ours, and their dawn leaked into our air like perfume through a doorway. What else could explain the coincidence of time, of image, of consequence? What else accounts for the uncanny symmetry of description? We do not need to prove it to feel its weight. Feeling has its own radiometric clock, and if you let the thought grow, it blooms into something quietly devastating. Two suns mean two sets of shadows, two truths cast at once. Imagine the moral of that geometry. In courtrooms and kitchens, in temples and laboratories, we argue over which shadow is real. But on that morning, both were. The ground accepted both and moved on. What if our lives are like this more often than we dare admit? What if choices split and climb together, and we live beneath doubled outcomes whose overlaps we mistake for fate? Later, when the strangers tried to speak about it, their voices shrank. They knew how language can betray the extraordinary. I saw, feels like an apology. It looked like, feels like retreat. So they collected detail instead. A second of silence where the birds should have erupted. A wind that reversed direction for the length of 3 breaths. The way the edge of a window threw 2 clean blades of light across a table, as if it were an altar. They wrote the facts down, as if facts could stand guard over wonder. But wonder is its own animal, gentle, skittish, unwilling to be caged by notation. It visits, marks you, and goes. If you're honest, you have your own morning filed away. Perhaps not with twin suns, but with something that refused to be contained by explanation. The phone call you answered before it rang. The face you recognized before you had met. The dream that left you with knowledge you could not have earned. We call these glitches because we hope naming will diminish them. But names do not shrink reality. They only give us a handle to carry it without bleeding. The strangers kept living because that is what mornings require. They made coffee, watered plants, answered messages. Yet the day wore a new texture. Colors seemed adjusted, not brighter or dimmer, but tuned to a new key. The body remembers what the mind tries to file away. The spine stores awe like a voltage. The palms hold the ghost of warmth that has no source. In a crowded train, in a hallway, at a sink, the memory would surface without warning. 2 lights, 2 shadows, 1 truth-refusing singularity. It was not obsession. It was a compass. Once you have seen the horizon break its own rule, you walk differently. You step more gently, knowing the floor you trust is laid over fathoms you do not understand. What became of the suns? If you ask the story that version of the morning prefers to tell, they moved together until the seam closed like a healed wound. The world sighed and pretended it had not trembled. The dogs barked again. The birds remembered their sheet music. Noon arrived, faithful as ever, and shadows returned to their obedient script. But somewhere, an echo of that seam remained, like a thin, pale scar on the day's skin. And if you passed your thumb across it, if you listened with the kind of listening you save for grief and for love, you could feel the faintest snag. We want proof because proof would let us hold court over wonder. But the sky is an old lawyer. It knows how to present just enough evidence to secure an acquittal for the impossible. 2 witnesses, continents apart, identical testimony, no photograph. Case dismissed. And yet, what jury of the heart could hear those stories and not feel the verdict tremble? What system of certainty could stand unshaken after even the possibility of a doubled sun? So tomorrow, when you step outside into the soft rattle of dawn, let the ordinary be as holy as it wants. Watch the single edge of fire lift the day into itself. Feel the small forgiveness that morning delivers to the failures of night. But keep a second set of eyes, the ones you learned the moment you heard this story. Be available to fracture. Be ready for the seam. If the light ever splits again, if the horizon opens like a quiet book and offers you 2 pages at once, do not waste the moment trying to choose which is more real. Stand there and let both truths write their warmth across your face. Let both shadows fall. Then go inside and pour your coffee and live as if the world is both steadier and stranger than you believed, because it is. Somewhere the 2 strangers who saw the twin suns continue. One walks a coastal road. One watches smoke rise in a mountain town. They are held together by nothing human, and yet they are kin. 2 small instruments tuned by the same unrepeatable chord. If they never meet, it does not matter. They already shared a morning the world refuses to admit. The sun rose, then it rose again. The sky, for a breath, remembered it was possible to be more than one thing. And once you have seen that, even once, you begin to suspect that everything else might be too. Echoed heartbeats. Imagine this. You are walking through your day, unremarkable, unaware. Suddenly your heart stumbles. It quickens, racing like a drum out of sync. You place your hand to your chest, feeling the pulse rise, fall, tremble in an uneven rhythm. To you, it is only a moment, perhaps stress, perhaps adrenaline, perhaps nothing at all, but somewhere else, far beyond your reach, in a different city, in a different life, a stranger falls. Their body gives way, their knees strike the ground, and their heart collapses at the exact rhythm as yours. 2 lives, locked in a beat neither knew they shared. The connection lasts only seconds. Yet, in those seconds, your pulse and theirs are bound as if some invisible thread stitched you together. You, still standing, chest pounding, Them, on the floor, gasping, fighting against an unseen collapse. To you, the moment fades. Your breath steadies, your pulse evens. But for them, it becomes a fracture in their life, a point they may never forget. They awaken in a hospital, doctors baffled, unable to explain why their heart betrayed them when it did. And in some distant, unknowable way, it was because yours stumbled first. We think of our hearts as private, locked behind ribs, beating only for us. But what if they are not? What if they are instruments in a greater orchestra, each pulse a note in a song too vast to hear? Perhaps when your rhythm shifts, someone else's follows. Perhaps there are moments when two lives, strangers across oceans, align so perfectly that one body echoes the other. Science calls this coincidence. Mystics call it resonance. But to the one who lived it, it feels like proof that no heartbeat is truly alone. Consider the way soldiers march together, their footsteps aligning until hearts begin to synchronize, each body falling into a single rhythm, or the way lovers lying beside one another find their pulses matching, their breath weaving in tandem, as if the body longs for harmony with another. Studies have shown that crowds in prayer or meditation, chanting or singing, begin to share heart rhythms, their bodies unknowingly tuning into one another like instruments of flesh. If this happens in rooms, why not across worlds? Why not between you and the stranger who fell at your unseen touch? And think of the metaphors that have always haunted us. The idea of soulmates, two hearts beating as one. The phrase, "my heart skipped a beat," when you see someone who stirs you. The belief in omens when sudden palpitations strike. Perhaps these are not metaphors at all. Perhaps they are fragments of a truth we have never fully understood. That hearts are not isolated engines, but part of a vast, invisible network, resonating across distances we cannot measure. Now, imagine the stranger who collapsed. They survived. And in the quiet afterward, they could not explain why their heart faltered when it did. But something in them changed. They began to live differently. They became aware of fragility, of time, of the mysterious rhythm that governs existence. They told their story, and others listened. A philosophy grew, that our lives are bound by invisible threads, that no heartbeat is solitary. Monks in distant monasteries began to meditate not just on breath, but on pulse. Physicians began to study not only the heart as an organ, but as a signal, an echo that moves through unseen fields. What was once an accident became, in their world, revelation. And you never knew. To you, it was only a moment of dizziness, a passing irregularity. Yet, in another life, it became legend. They named it Echoed Heartbeats, the story of how one pulse quickened and another life collapsed in rhythm. For them, it proved that no one beats alone, that every life is part of a larger drumbeat guiding existence. And even now, perhaps across distances you will never cross, someone is listening to their own heart, wondering if it beats in time with yours. Because maybe freedom and destiny, solitude and connection are illusions. Maybe we are all part of one great pulse, invisible yet shared, our heartbeats colliding and resonating across realities. And maybe, in that moment when your chest tightened, you brushed against a truth too vast to name, that your life is not only your own, it is echoed, carried, and reflected in the lives of strangers who will never know your name. Moonlight Signatures. They called it the Moonlight Signature, though it was not a mark of ink, but of something deeper, an echo carried across centuries. The story begins with a verse, a single fragment of poetry, whispered beneath the silver glow of a midnight sky. A poet, centuries ago, sat alone with candlelight, gazing upward at the moon as it floated above rooftops and rivers, and wrote words that trembled with longing. A verse so simple, so human, it felt as though it had always existed. They folded the parchment, tucked it into a journal, and believed it was theirs, unique, original, eternal. But centuries later, another poet, separated by time, language, and history, lifted their eyes to the same moon and, in the solitude of their own night, wrote the exact same verse, not inspired by, not borrowed from, but born anew, as if the moon itself whispered it into their mind. They too believed it was theirs alone, two poets, two nights, two lifetimes apart, and yet the same words, identical in rhythm and pulse, poured onto paper as though memory itself had bent across centuries. What does that mean? Was it coincidence, the inevitable overlap of human hearts? Or was it something stranger? that certain truths, certain metaphors, exist in the air itself, waiting for someone to translate them into words. When you think of the moon, what do you see? A lantern over the world, a mirror of longing, a reminder of distance. How many lovers across time have spoken the same metaphors without ever hearing one another? Perhaps the moon is the great thief of poetry, stealing verses from our hearts and scattering them across centuries so that no one can truly claim authorship. The first poet's verse never left its parchment. It was forgotten in an attic, sealed in dust, its ink fading into illegibility. But the second poet's verse found readers, was recited in gatherings, etched into anthologies. Scholars, generations later, unearthed the first poem and were stunned to find the same lines, written centuries earlier by someone who could never have known. Two signatures, identical, beneath the same light. And the world was forced to ask, who owns a thought? Who owns a metaphor? If two hearts across time dream the same dream, is it theft? Or is it proof that imagination itself is communal, a river we all dip into unknowingly? Consider your own life. Have you ever spoken words you thought were original, only to find them already written by someone else? Have you ever felt a song, a phrase, a vision, bloom in you as if it were entirely yours, only to discover it lived long before you? Does that diminish its beauty, or deepen it, reminding us that creation is less about ownership and more about resonance? The poets of Moonlight remind us that originality is not isolation, it is connection. It is the same note played on different instruments, centuries apart, yet vibrating with the same eternal pitch. But the story carries a darker edge too. The second poet, upon learning of the earlier verse, spiraled into doubt. Were they ever truly a poet at all, or only a vessel repeating what had already been written? Their fame felt like theft, their gift like fraud. They nearly burned their manuscripts in shame. Yet a friend reminded them the verse had been born again, not copied, that two people separated by time, language, and distance could write the same words proves not theft, but truth. The moon itself had demanded expression, and they had answered. Originality, perhaps, is not being first, but being necessary. And what of the first poet? They never knew. They died believing their words would vanish with them, never suspecting that centuries later, another hand would resurrect their verse, not by discovery, but by repetition. In some strange way, immortality was granted not by preservation, but by duplication. Their words lived not because they were passed down, but because they were reborn. Think of that. How many of our thoughts are not ours alone? How many of our words are echoes of voices we will never hear? Memory is not a straight line, but a net, catching fragments of eternity that resurface again and again. The moon remains, the same silver witness above every generation. And perhaps it speaks to us all in the same language, waiting to be heard anew each century. So, the next time you see the moon, remember the two poets and their signatures of light. Know that the verse you whisper might already exist somewhere else, or might one day be written again by someone you will never meet. Does that make it less yours? Or does it prove that you are part of a chorus too vast for time to silence? The moon gathers our words, scatters them across centuries, and signs them back into existence. And when the echo returns, it is not theft, not coincidence, but proof that beauty belongs not to individuals, but to eternity. Clock strikes twice. It was ordinary. A clock on the wall, hands ticking with the quiet arrogance of inevitability. You glanced at it without meaning to, without urgency, maybe even with boredom. But in that instant, across the weave of realities, someone else, someone you will never meet, lifted their eyes to their own clock and saw the exact same time. And for reasons they could not name, they shivered. A coincidence, you would say. Numbers lining up by chance, two gazes intersecting in the mathematics of hours. Yet, coincidence is a fragile word, one we use to hide our fear of patterns too large for us to see. What if it was not chance? What if, in that single second, time folded across dimensions and forced two strangers into alignment? What if clocks are not instruments of measurement at all, but mirrors, reflecting us to one another across the thin walls of existence? Think about the way we live tethered to time, the alarm pulling us from sleep, the bell dismissing us from school, the train schedule holding us hostage. Every hour is a command, every minute a chain. We check clocks not to know where we are, but to know who we are allowed to be. Yet, once in a while, the act of looking becomes uncanny. the repeated numbers, the familiar sequences, 1111, 333, 444. You tell yourself it's random, but the body knows otherwise. A chill runs the spine. A breath stutters. It feels like being watched, not by a person, but by time itself. Now imagine that in another timeline, someone else felt the same chill at the exact same second. To them, it was proof of something greater, an omen, a signal, a presence brushing against their life. They stepped away from the clock unsettled, their thoughts shaken loose, as if they had glimpsed a shadow moving behind the curtain of the world. For you, the second passed. For them, it became an anchor, a moment they would revisit again and again, certain that it meant something. History is full of people who believed clocks could speak. Mystics once claimed certain hours opened gates between worlds. Sailors charted time not only by stars, but by instincts of fate. In monasteries, the bells were not just signals of prayer, but reminders that eternity could be touched in repetition. Even today, entire cultures whisper wishes when numbers align on the digital screen. Why? Because deep down, we know time is not just a measure, it is a language. And sometimes, it speaks. So when the clock struck for both of you, perhaps it was not a coincidence, but a conversation, a shared breath across worlds. You did not feel the shiver, but they did. Perhaps they were more open, more raw, more attuned. Perhaps their life was waiting for a sign, and you, without knowing, helped deliver it. Because in that instant, though you will never cross paths, you were connected. Your glance was the twin of theirs, your second the echo of theirs, your silence the mirror of their breath. The clock became the meeting place. And what does that mean for you? That your life may be stitched to others in ways you will never trace. That every glance at a clock, every idle check of the hour, could be synchronizing with countless unseen lives. That in the rhythm of seconds ticking, there are hidden alignments, meetings without meetings, encounters without faces. We live as if our time is ours alone, yet it is shared more often than we realize. The stranger who shivered may spend their whole life wondering why that second mattered. They may write it down, tell their children, mark the day as sacred. They may believe it was the touch of destiny. And you moved on. You never knew. That is the haunting truth. That one life can be changed by a moment you considered meaningless. That your casual glance became their omen. That your silence became their revelation. So next time your eyes flicker to the clock, pause. Consider that somewhere, someone else is looking too. And perhaps, in that instant, time itself is striking twice. Not to measure the hours, but to remind you that you are not as alone as you think. Ocean shared memory. You stood at the edge of the shore, where the land surrenders to water, and let a wave break over your feet. Salt and foam curled around your ankles, cool and fleeting, before retreating back to its endless home. You thought it was nothing more than the ordinary rhythm of the ocean, one tide in a billion tides. Yet, at that same instant, across the world, another wave reached another shore and touched the feet of someone else. You did not know them. They did not know you. But the seas had braided your moments together, as though the tides were speaking across continents. It was coincidence, you might say. The ocean is vast, the waves uncountable. Of course, somewhere, at any moment, someone else is standing at a shoreline, meeting the same breath of water. And yet, doesn't the thought feel heavier than coincidence? Doesn't it feel like the sea itself remembered you both, carrying a whisper from one shore to another? The wave that touched you had been born of winds halfway across the globe, carried for days, gathering power and voice before arriving at your feet. The wave that touched them was its twin, another crest born of the same storm, traveling in another direction. And so, without knowing, you and a stranger shared the same pulse of the same ocean, a communion hidden in salt and distance. We often speak of oceans as barriers, great gulfs that divide lands, keep peoples apart, swallow ships whole. But here, in this moment, the sea is not division. It is memory. It is bridge. Every drop of water on earth belongs to the same endless cycle, a dance older than mountains, older than stars. The rain that falls on your face today may once have washed the hands of an ancestor 1,000 years ago. The wave that retreats from your ankles may one day return as snow on a peak, or as the thirst-quenching sip of someone yet unborn. The ocean remembers. It carries us all. And when you let the wave touch you, you stepped into that memory. For in that instant, you were not alone. A stranger in another land felt the same cold rush, the same weight of water, the same intimate presence of the tide. Perhaps they lifted their eyes to the horizon at the very same second you did. Perhaps they wondered, as you did, what it means to belong to something so vast and restless. And though you will never meet them, though their name will never pass your lips, you are bound together by the secret ceremony of the sea. This is not only poetry, it is truth. The physics of water ensures that every tide is connected, every current threaded to another. The moon pulls, the earth turns, the oceans move as one body. When you stand at the shore, you are touching not just your sea, but all seas. The wave at your feet has traveled from places you will never see, carrying stories you will never hear. It has brushed coral in the Pacific, tangled with kelp in the Atlantic, kissed ice in the Arctic, and still found its way to you. And in the same breath, it found its way to them. Two shores, one touch. What might this mean for us? Perhaps that our separations are illusions, that the lines we draw between nations, between peoples, between selves, are shallow compared to the depths that bind us. Just as the sea connects continents, unseen but undeniable, so too do invisible tides connect our lives. You may think you are alone in your grief, your joy, your longing, but somewhere, across distance, another heart is feeling the same surge. Your wave breaks here, theirs breaks there, and though the sands are different, the ocean is the same. The stranger who stood in their own dawn or dusk carried that moment with them. Perhaps it became a memory they returned to when life grew heavy, the reminder of the sea's vast embrace, and the certainty they felt that someone, somewhere, was also standing at the edge of the world. Perhaps it became part of their family's lore, told to children as proof that the ocean listens, that every wave carries communion, and perhaps, in ways you will never know, it changed them. Because once you feel part of something that spans continents, you cannot return to believing you are small. And you walked away from the shore, perhaps never thinking of it again. You wiped the salt from your skin, shook sand from your shoes, and carried on. But in another dimension, in the shared memory of the ocean, the moment never faded. It was preserved. Your feet, their feet, and the waves that bound them together. In that world, the tide itself remembers you. It carries your presence as part of its song. And when it touches another shore, it tells the story again. Two lives, joined in salt and foam, proof that separation is never as final as it seems. So when you next stand at the water's edge, remember this. The ocean is not only before you, it is beneath you, around you, within you. It is in the tears you cry, in the blood that courses through your veins, in the air made heavy with rain. It is in the stranger far away, and whose wave meets yours without ever asking permission. You are not merely looking at the sea, you are participating in its memory, adding yourself to its unbroken story. And maybe, just maybe, someone across the world feels it too, at the very same moment. The sea cupping both your feet and theirs, whispering across distance. You are not alone. Thought drift pattern. It begins in silence, with an idea so small you almost dismiss it as nothing. A fragment of thought that flickers in the corner of your mind. Half a sentence, half a shape, half a possibility. You turn it over once, then let it fall. Life is full of such fragments. Unfinished sketches, notions that never ripen, sparks that vanish before they find tinder. You move on, believing the thought died the moment you abandoned it. But what if thoughts do not vanish? What if they drift? There are stories whispered among inventors, dreamers, and philosophers. Strange overlaps that defy coincidence. A formula scribbled in one hemisphere, dreamt by another in the same week. A machine imagined in sketches that never left the drawer, suddenly appearing in blueprints across an ocean. An artist waking with a melody in their head that another has already written. We call it synchronicity, collective unconscious, coincidence. But what if it is something more deliberate, thoughts themselves moving like currents across a veil that separates minds, searching for a host willing to carry them forward? You abandon the idea, and somewhere else, in the deep chamber of sleep, another dreamed it fully formed. They woke startled, as if handed a gift they could not account for. And when they began to build it, the world assumed a genius had struck them alone. They never knew it was born in two minds, that yours was the cradle and theirs the continuation. History is riddled with these doubled births. the telephone conceived simultaneously by Bell and Gray, the theory of evolution, Darwin and Wallace, sketching its bones within years of each other, calculus unfolding in Newton's ink and Leibniz's pen, parallel but apart. Even in art and literature, you find stories that appear in clusters, paintings that mirror each other, myths that bloom in cultures with no contact. It is as if ideas are less inventions than migrations, flocks of thought birds flying across the membranes of human consciousness, landing wherever they find open ground. And what does that say about you? That the thought you released was not wasted. It traveled. It found soil. It took root in someone who could not ignore it. The echo became their dream, their blueprint, their claim to legacy. You may never be credited, but you are still part of the pattern, the unseen lattice through which thought travels when minds drift close to one another across the veil. Perhaps this explains why certain moments feel electric, why you think of someone just as they call, why words form in your throat as another speaks them, why strangers arrive at the same insight without contact. Consciousness may not be sealed inside skulls at all. It may be porous, interwoven, a sea of reflections where thoughts leak and blend and return changed. Imagine thought itself as a migratory force, like wind carrying seeds. Some settle where they fall, others drift farther, crossing borders, oceans, even dimensions. You may forget the seed you dropped, but somewhere it is already a forest. Somewhere a stranger is walking among trees that only exist because your hand once let go. And if this is true, then no abandoned idea is truly lost. Each is a signal released, waiting for another mind to receive. Each is proof that we are less solitary than we imagine, that invention is a chorus rather than a solo. The veil is thin. Minds echo. Thoughts drift. And the world you wake into each morning may already be shaped by the dreams someone else forgot to keep. So the next time an idea rises and slips away, do not mourn its loss. Somewhere, across the veil, another hand is already reaching for it. Somewhere, a stranger is waking with your thought in their mouth like the first word of a new language. Somewhere, history is bending around the idea you let go, proving that even in forgetting, you still help to invent the future. The song in static. Imagine sitting alone, absent-mindedly humming. The tune slips from your lips without effort, a melody born of nowhere, delicate and fleeting. You don't even think of it as creation. Just sound filling silence, like breath given shape. Hours later, you switch on the radio. Static. Then, music. And there it is. The very tune you hummed, unfolding note for note, as if the air itself remembered you. The announcer's voice breaks in, claiming it's a brand new release, never before recorded. A song entering the world for the very first time. You freeze. How could it be? You had no sheet music, no recording device, no audience. The song should have died the moment your lips went still. And yet, it lives. Carried forward by a voice you've never heard, claimed by a world that insists it belongs to someone else. Did you dream it? Did you steal it unknowingly from a future that was already waiting? Or did the universe take your hum and weave it instantly into reality, echoing it back to you through wires and frequencies? This is not merely coincidence. History is filled with stories of melodies arriving before their time, of artists and strangers plucking songs from the ether as though they had always existed, waiting only for a vessel to sing them. Paul McCartney swore the tune of yesterday came to him in a dream, so perfect he was convinced it must already exist. Nikola Tesla claimed the air itself was filled with music if one only had the right instruments to hear it. Countless composers, poets, and dreamers have spoken of melodies arriving whole, as though whispered by something beyond human thought. You too stepped into that current, humming what the world was about to receive. But here lies the deeper mystery. What if creation is not linear? What if songs, like memories, ripple across time and reality, appearing to multiple people at once? In one strand, you hum it. In another, a songwriter scribbles it down, believing it's theirs. In another, the radio blares it before anyone claims authorship. Perhaps what we call inspiration is simply tapping into a universal archive, a field of patterns and harmonies that exist outside of time, waiting to be discovered again and again. Think of it like static itself, the invisible noise between stations, carrying fragments of sound across distances. Maybe your hum was not lost. Maybe it entered that static, encoded into vibrations that reach the right receiver, a musician, a producer, a studio mic, until the radio could play it back to you. You did not imagine it, you seeded it. And once seeded, it became real. Now imagine the implications. If a single tune can slip from your lips and echo back through the machinery of the world, how much else might be passing through us unnoticed? How many thoughts, ideas, inventions are not ours, but transmissions, fragments caught and released into the static of existence? When we speak of déjà vu, prophecy, synchronicity, could it all be the same phenomenon? The world whispering back what we've already hummed into it without knowing? The haunting part is this. Somewhere, someone will remember that song and attach it to a memory, a love, a loss. For them, it will be their soundtrack, the song that defined an era of their life, and they will never know that, for a moment, it was yours first. Your tune, unrecorded, unclaimed, passed through you like wind through a reed before becoming the anthem of strangers. Perhaps that is what music truly is, a reminder that nothing we create is wholly ours, that sound itself belongs to everyone, carried by air, absorbed by memory, transformed by time. You hummed. The world answered, and now the melody lives forever, neither fully yours nor fully theirs, but part of something larger. So the next time static crackles and a new song bleeds through, listen closely. You may not just be hearing music, you may be hearing your own echo, your hum carried back to you from a world that insists songs are born only once, even as they are reborn endlessly in the silence we forget to notice. Shadow alignment. They called it the shadow alignment, though it was less an event and more a whisper from the universe itself. Imagine this. 2 eclipses, separated by centuries, each casting their darkness on the same latitude, the same stretch of Earth, as if time itself had folded over. The sun, the moon, and the earth aligned with a precision too sharp to ignore, and for a few minutes, the world stood in silence beneath a repeated gesture. People centuries apart looked up, their breath caught, their skin tingling with the same awe. And though they lived in different worlds, with different languages, different empires, different fears, they were united by shadow, as if the cosmos had chosen to remind them that repetition is never accident. The first eclipse passed over a forgotten kingdom. Priests dressed in gold declared it a sign from the gods, a warning against arrogance. Farmers fell to their knees, whispering prayers into the soil, believing the sun itself had abandoned them. The king ordered sacrifices, desperate to restore the light. When it returned, as it always does, they believed the ritual had worked. That memory etched itself into their culture. Darkness as punishment, light as forgiveness. Centuries later, at that exact same latitude, the second eclipse came. But this time, the people were different. They had maps, telescopes, calendars. They no longer prayed to gods of fire, but to the laws of astronomy. And yet, when the shadow swept across their faces, they felt the same fear. Their hearts skipped with the same panic. Even with their science, the air tasted wrong. The birds went silent. The earth seemed to hold its breath. Knowledge did not erase awe. It only sharpened it. The same gesture, the same silence, the same shiver down the spine. 2 eclipses, centuries apart, proving that human beings are bound less by time than by wonder. But here lies the mystery. Why at the same latitude? Why the same scar of shadow across the earth? Astronomers can calculate cycles, predict alignments, explain patterns. Yet something about the repetition unsettles us. It feels too deliberate, too precise, like the universe writing the same word twice in a letter we cannot fully read. Was it coincidence or choreography? Did the cosmos, in its vast indifference, accidentally mirror itself? Or is there a deeper rhythm we have yet to decipher? Think of shadows themselves. They are the absence of light, yet they tell us where light has been. An eclipse is a shadow magnified, a signature of movement too vast for us to control. And when 2 shadows centuries apart fall in the same place, it feels less like chance and more like memory. As though the earth itself remembers, as though time itself carries scars we can only glimpse when the heavens align. For those who stood beneath the first eclipse, it was a divine command. For those who stood beneath the second, it was a cosmic equation. But for us, looking back, it is something else entirely. Proof that we live in a loop of gestures, repeating patterns written across centuries. How many times has the universe whispered the same truth to us, hoping we will finally hear it? How many times have we mistaken recurrence for coincidence, when it might be invitation? And is it only the sky that repeats, or do our own lives echo in similar patterns? Think of the choices you've made, the mistakes you've repeated, the moments of déjà vu that convince you you've been here before. Perhaps shadow alignment is not just celestial, it is personal. Perhaps the same forces that bend the moon into place bend us into repetition, forcing us to confront our cycles until we learn. The eclipse above and the eclipse within. Two shadows, centuries apart, each demanding reflection. Some say the people of the second eclipse found old records of the first. They were astonished to read descriptions so close to their own. The same fear, the same silence, the same trembling awe. It was as if strangers across centuries had looked into the same mirror and gasped together. Others claim that the alignments are markers, signposts left by a universe that cannot speak in words, but only in light and darkness. Still others whisper of simulation, that our world is coded to repeat itself at intervals, leaving us subtle traces. Shadows laid one atop another like fingerprints on time. Whether myth or science, whether warning or coincidence, the truth lingers. Two eclipses, centuries apart, casting identical shadows. The gesture of a universe that may be vast beyond our comprehension, but not so vast that it cannot repeat itself. Not so vast that it cannot remind us that we, too, are part of the pattern. So the next time the sky darkens, the birds go silent, and the shadow races across the earth, ask yourself, whose eyes once stood here centuries ago, watching this same gesture? What prayers did they whisper? What questions did they ask? What awe did they feel? And when the light returns, remember, just as they remembered, that some patterns are too precise to be ignored. The universe does not always speak, but when it repeats itself, it is leaving us a message, and perhaps that message is simple. Pay attention. The shadow you stand in today may be the echo of one cast centuries ago, and the prelude of one yet to come. The written stranger. It begins with a pen, a piece of paper, and a name. You wrote it almost without thought. Letters unfolding under your hand, a mark on a page like so many before it. It could have been a friend's name, a stranger's, even one you invented without knowing why. Perhaps it was part of a list. Perhaps it was nothing more than idle motion, ink spilling into form. Yet, in that exact instant, at that precise heartbeat of time, somewhere nearby, a passerby parted their lips and spoke that very same name aloud. Two acts, separated by chance, or by something greater, collided in silence. Coincidence, you might say. But coincidence is a fragile shield against the unease of meaning. Why that name? Why that moment? Was it simply probability, or was it proof that words, once thought, ripple outward and demand to be echoed? Imagine being the passerby, walking through the day with thoughts adrift, and suddenly a name slips from your mouth. You do not know why you said it. Perhaps you were recalling someone long forgotten. Perhaps you heard it in a dream. Perhaps you felt compelled. And at that same instant, unseen, your voice became a twin to another's ink. There is a strange intimacy in such alignment. A name is never neutral. It carries weight, history, resonance. It binds the idea of a person to sound, and when written, it etches them into permanence. Names outlive flesh. They are carved into stones, whispered in prayers, scattered in records. To write a name is to declare it matters. To speak a name is to resurrect it into breath. What happens when both occur at once, when the written and the spoken converge in perfect synchronicity? Perhaps it is more than chance. Perhaps it is a signal that names themselves are bridges, and sometimes those bridges open when two hands and two voices meet. Think of the myths that circle around names. Ancient cultures believed to know a person's true name was to hold power over them. To whisper it was to summon their essence. To erase it was to erase them from the world. Even today we etch names into monuments as a way of refusing death, as if letters carved in stone can anchor souls against forgetting. When you wrote that name, and another spoke it, for that instant, you both became keepers of something larger, the guardians of identity, the custodians of memory. And maybe, just maybe, the one whose name it was felt it. Perhaps in that same second they paused, shivering, glancing over their shoulder without knowing why. Perhaps their heart stuttered, as if someone had touched them from a distance. Because names, spoken or written, are not only identifiers, they are invitations. To be named is to be noticed. To be noticed is to exist. The passerby who whispered may never know why the word left their lips. You may never know why your pen was drawn to those letters, but in another version of history, people would look back on that convergence and call it sacred. They would say the written stranger was the moment worlds touched. They would say it was proof that thought and sound, ink and air, are threads in the same fabric. And what does this mean for you? That your smallest acts may not be small at all. That every name you write, every word you send into paper, may be answered somewhere, somehow. That language itself is alive, weaving us together in ways we cannot see. A passerby whispered your word at the exact moment you inscribed it. To them, it was breath. To you, it was ink. To the universe, it was a signal. So do not dismiss the strangeness of it, because once, in a fleeting instant, your pen and another's voice became one, a name, written and spoken, folded into a single moment that belonged to neither of you alone. And though you both walked on, forgetting, that instant remains, etched not only in paper or air, but in the hidden ledger of coincidences too precise to ignore. Reflections whisper. On a night you thought was ordinary, you looked into the mirror. Perhaps it was before sleep, when the house was quiet, when shadows softened the edges of your face. You leaned closer, eyes half tired, and wondered, if only for a second, what your reflection really was. Was it truly you, or was it another world, staring back, mimicking your every move with uncanny precision? You shook off the thought. You closed your eyes, drifted into dreams, and forgot. But in that same night across the world, someone else was dreaming. And in their dream, they stood before their own mirror. And as the glass grew bright, they saw you, your face, your gaze. As if the reflection had betrayed its duty, had turned sideways through the fabric of dimensions, and offered them your image. They woke shaken, convinced they had been touched by something larger than chance. You did not know them. They did not know you. Yet the mirrors of your sleep spoke to each other, trading your faces like secrets. What does it mean to be seen by someone you have never met? What does it mean to live in a mind that you did not choose to enter? For that stranger, the dream was no simple fantasy. It was revelation. They knew you were real, though they could not explain why. They carried your reflection in memory as though it were proof. Proof that the self is not locked within a single body. That somewhere, across oceans and borders, another soul had brushed theirs in the silence of sleep. And perhaps you too remembered fragments. A face not yours, yet strangely familiar. A whisper of recognition in the dreamscape. You awoke uncertain, perhaps brushing it off as nothing. Unaware that in another room of existence, someone was waking at the same hour with certainty that you were not a dream. Dreams have always been bridges. Ancient cultures believed that spirits traveled freely through sleep, carrying messages, warnings, and encounters across distance. Today, science explains dreams as the brain stitching together fragments of thought, memory, and desire. But explanations cannot erase experience. When two people, separated by continents, carry the same vision in the same night, something deeper seems to stir. Perhaps consciousness itself is an ocean, and dreams are its tides, touching distant shores at once, whispering reflections we mistake for accidents. The stranger who saw your face lived differently afterward. They wrote about you, painted your likeness, sang to the image that haunted them. Not because they understood, but because they believed. They believed that if the mirror could bend once, it could bend again. That one night, in dream or waking, they would meet you. And so, you became part of their destiny without knowing it, shaping choices they made, loves they sought, paths they walked. Your reflection became their compass. And here is the unsettling beauty. How many times has this already happened to you? How many strangers' dreams have you wandered into, appearing uninvited, yet unforgettable? Perhaps that face you cannot shake, glimpsed once in your own dream, was not a creation of your mind at all, but a whisper from another world, where someone else is now remembering you with the same intensity. How many lives are haunted by you without your permission? How many stories name you as the proof of something greater? There is a loneliness in being human, a feeling that we live sealed within the boundaries of our own skin. But reflections have always betrayed that lie. A mirror shows us ourselves, yet the possibility has always lingered. What if it shows us someone else? What if our double, our counterpart, our twin across dimensions, presses back against the same glass at the same moment? That night, your dreams and theirs aligned, and for one breath of eternity, the separation dissolved. Two reflections whispered each other's names without sound. You may never meet them here. You may never know their voice, their story, the small details that made them human. But in that dream, they knew you. And they woke believing that you exist. And belief. Belief is enough to change a life. They told others of the dream, and those others wondered. They wrote the memory into journals, into songs, into stories passed on like heirlooms. Generations later, their descendants still speak of the dream of the mirror, where a stranger's face appeared, as vivid as their own. And though your name is lost, though your memory in this world has long faded, in theirs you remain immortal. So when you next stand before a mirror, pause, look into your own eyes. Consider the possibility that the glass is thinner than you think, that your reflection may not be yours alone, that on some night, somewhere, someone else is staring back, and that in the silence of dreams, your faces will whisper again. Firelight twin spark. There are nights when the world feels stitched together by invisible threads, moments where something far away bends itself into the shape of something near, as if reality were practicing symmetry. One such story lingers in whispers, the tale of two fires. On the same night, in forests separated by mountains and rivers, two strangers bent low over kindling. Neither knew the other existed. One struck flint against stone, the other coaxed flame from dry twigs. Each had the same patient ritual, breath against ember, the hush of waiting, the sudden bloom of orange in the dark. And at the same instant, carried by a wind that touched both woods, each fire leapt alive. Not staggered, not delayed, ignited in the same heartbeat. Witnesses later swore that the sparks did not scatter randomly. They rose in the same shapes, mirrored across distance. A spiral, a branching star, a brief crown of flame, identical patterns written in the firelight, as if the two camps were not strangers at all, but halves of one gesture. How do we explain such symmetry? Was it chance, an accident of physics, the way air and tinder obey the same laws, and so coincidence stitched them together? Or was it something subtler, a synchrony hidden inside the world, a rhythm we rarely hear but sometimes stumble into? Think of it. Two fires breathing the same breath through miles apart. Two sets of sparks sketching the same fleeting constellation in air. For those who saw it, the night never returned to ordinary. They carried the sense that their lives were not solitary threads, but part of a vast tapestry, where patterns repeat, sometimes in places we cannot see. Ancient peoples would have called this an omen. Twin flames, they might say, meant twin destinies, souls bound across distance, events preparing to mirror each other. And in myths across the world, fire has always been a messenger, the gift of gods, the symbol of knowledge, the proof that something unseen has entered the visible. Two fires igniting in unison would not be dismissed as accident. It would be read as a conversation between worlds. Perhaps that is what happened here. Not two fires, but one fire revealed twice, like a reflection seen in twin mirrors. Perhaps reality sometimes doubles itself for reasons we do not yet understand, leaving us staring into the mystery of repetition. And maybe, when we see such patterns, when two lives begin on the same day, when two voices speak the same words without planning, when two flames leap up in the same breath, we are glimpsing the truth that our stories are less separate than we think. The sparks fade quickly, swallowed by the dark sky. The fires settle into ordinary warmth. Yet, for those who remember, the image endures. Two camps, two forests, two strangers, one spark shared across distance. A reminder that even the smallest light may be part of something vast, repeating, and connected. Crossing paths, never met. Imagine the turn of a corner. You're walking, unthinking, your feet carrying you down a street you almost didn't choose. Maybe you were going to take another path, but changed your mind at the last second. To you, it's nothing. Just a decision so small, it dissolves the moment you make it. But in another city, miles away, a stranger does the same. They too turn down a street, their body moving with the same rhythm, their steps falling in mirrored patterns. For a brief and impossible span of time, the two of you are aligned, walking together though separated by distance, shadowing each other like reflections in different mirrors, and yet, you will never know. You will never meet. There's something haunting about this, because in that moment, you and a stranger were joined by invisible inches, living out movements that should have brought you face to face, if not for the distance of geography. And the question rises, how many times does this happen? How often do our lives ripple in synchrony with people we will never meet, bound together by chance, by timing, by some hidden geometry of existence? Science shrugs and calls it coincidence. Statisticians reduce it to probability, but humans have always felt the weight of these patterns more deeply. Think of the uncanny experiences where you speak a thought aloud just as a stranger miles away says the same words. Or when two lovers, separated by continents, dream the same dream on the same night. Or when tragedies ripple across cities, strangers waking with sudden dread moments before disaster strikes in places they've never been. These are the fractures in our sense of separation. The moments where we suspect that lives are not isolated threads, but strands woven into a single hidden tapestry. Picture it more vividly. You step to avoid a puddle. The stranger steps at the same instant to avoid a crack in their sidewalk. You pause to glance in a shop window, and at that precise heartbeat, they pause to tie a shoe. If you laid these two walks side by side, the symmetry would be eerie, almost perfect. But instead, the two paths remain unknown to one another, parallel lives never touching. That is the paradox. They are so close they could have collided, yet they remain forever apart. Philosophers have long wondered if every choice creates an echo. Some call it synchronicity. Some call it quantum entanglement of human experience. Perhaps there is no such thing as a solitary action. Every turn, every step, every pause ripples outward, and somewhere else another life answers. Maybe the stranger's mirrored walk was not chance at all, but resonance. Your body humming a rhythm the world echoed back through theirs. And yet, there's a kind of ache in it, isn't there? To know that someone's steps matched yours, that for a moment your lives were aligned as though rehearsed, but that you will never speak, never lock eyes, never even know the other exists. They vanish back into their city, you into yours, both unaware that, for a heartbeat, you were connected in the purest way two strangers can be, through unseen symmetry. But maybe the meaning lies not in meeting, but in missing. Because if such parallels exist, they remind us of something we often forget, that we are not separate, solitary wanderers. We are part of a great unseen choreography, every step woven into the steps of countless others. Even if you never meet the stranger, you still shared something with them, a rhythm, a pattern, a silent dance that crossed the gap of distance. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps in another strand you did meet. That street corner brought you face to face, and your mirrored steps became the beginning of a story instead of a fleeting echo. But here, in this reality, you remain strangers. Still, the echo lingers. The knowledge that you walked together without ever crossing, that lives brushed against each other by invisible inches, leaving only the ghost of what might have been. Lightning's double strike. They called it lightning's double strike, though the world knew it as nothing more than a flicker of storm on two distant horizons. In one strand of reality, a storm raged above a jungle, humidity so thick it pressed against the chest like a second skin. In another, thousands of miles away, lightning cracked across a desert sky, dry air shattering with fire. Two bolts, continents apart, never meant to meet. And yet, when the satellites looked down, they recorded them as one flash, one event, a singular scar of light across the planet, as if the sky itself had braided distant storms into a single gesture. To those on the ground, it was ordinary. In the jungle, a child covered their ears against the thunder. In the desert, a herdsman watched the horizon split with white fire. Each thought they had witnessed something local, small, contained. Neither knew that the satellites above, cold metal eyes orbiting the Earth, saw their storms as one heartbeat of light. What does it mean when events so far apart are remembered by the heavens as one? When distance dissolves and two moments become indistinguishable? Scientists argued over data. Perhaps it was coincidence, a trick of timing, a blur in the sensors. But poets and dreamers whispered otherwise. They said lightning had revealed a secret, that distance is not as solid as we believe, that sometimes the universe stitches two places together with a thread of fire, that two storms can conspire, continents apart, to make a single note in the sky's great song. Think of the implications. If two bolts of lightning can be seen as one, what else in our lives is unified beyond our comprehension? Two lovers, separated by oceans, thinking of each other at the same instant. Two strangers, continents apart, making the same decision, feeling the same fear, laughing the same laugh. To us, they are separate. To the universe, they may be one event, a single spark stretched across distance. Lightning's double strike is not anomaly, it is reminder. That simultaneity binds us more deeply than space divides us. But the story carries unease, for if storms can align across continents, what else might align? Wars begun on the same day in different corners of the earth. Births and deaths paired like reflections, echoing across cultures that never meet. Even inventions, discovered by minds unaware of each other, as though ideas themselves fall like lightning, not into one place, but into many at once. Was lightning's double strike an accident of nature, or a glimpse of the pattern beneath? The herdsman in the desert told his grandchildren of the night, the horizon tore itself open. The child in the jungle remembered thunder louder than drums. Neither knew their stories belonged to one another, threads of the same cosmic flash. Centuries from now, perhaps both accounts will be read side by side, and someone will marvel that two storms were never separate at all. That history itself sometimes erases distance, just as lightning did. And does this not mirror us? How many of our choices, our actions, are double strikes, echoed in the lives of others we will never meet? You may think your struggle is yours alone, but somewhere, across the world, another heart is breaking in the same way, at the same time. You may think your joy is singular, but another laugh rises with yours in perfect synchrony. The satellites may not record it, but the universe does. Lightning's double strike teaches us that simultaneity is not rare, it is constant. Rarely do we see it. Rarer still do we believe it. Some whisper that the double strike was not accident, but message, that the sky itself was telling us that separation is illusion. That light does not ask permission from geography. That time, not space, binds us more tightly than we know. Others believe it was proof of a simulation, that reality, like faulty code, occasionally collapses two separate lines into one flash, two origins, one event, two worlds. Yet whether you see anomaly, miracle, or glitch, the truth is unshaken. On that night, lightning rewrote distance. The satellites did not record borders or oceans or nations. They recorded only light, raw, fierce, indivisible, a scar carved into the atmosphere that said for one instant the world was whole. So the next time you see lightning, whether on your horizon or in someone else's memory, ask yourself, whose storm is striking with yours? Whose night sky shares your fire? And what other moments in your life, your laughter, your pain, your choices, are double strikes, burning in synchrony across the vastness, unified by forces you will never see? For in the end, lightning is not just fire in the sky, it is reminder that no distance is too great for connection, and no storm is ever truly alone. Wish across stars. It began with fire across the sky, a streak of light tearing through the dark, sudden, brief, impossible to ignore. You tilted your head upward, heart catching in your throat, and instinctively you made a wish. Perhaps you whispered it. Perhaps you held it silently in your chest. Perhaps it was only half-formed, a yearning you did not yet have the courage to name. But in that same second, across an ocean, on the other side of the turning earth, another stranger lifted their gaze to the very same meteor, and they too wished. Two voices, two hearts, bound by the trajectory of a single burning stone. Think about how fragile and fleeting such a moment is. A meteor is nothing more than dust, hurtling into flame as it collides with our atmosphere, vanishing in seconds. And yet for centuries we have treated them as divine, signs from the heavens, omens of war, harbingers of fortune. To us, they are not stone at all, but possibility incarnate, writing brief messages across the night sky. We don't just look, we respond. We tie our hopes to their disappearance, as though something dying in fire can carry our desires into eternity. And so, You made your wish. You believed it belonged to you alone. But somewhere far away, someone else claimed that same second, pouring their hope into the very same falling star. They may have wished for love, for survival, for a reunion, for peace. You will never know. They will never know yours. Yet, for that instant, two lives, separated by oceans, cultures, languages, everything, became one act, one ritual. You were no longer alone in your longing. What if that is the secret of wishing? That it is not about whether the star answers, but about how many unseen hands are joined together in the asking. That every meteor, in every century, has carried not just one wish, but millions, all layered over one another like voices in a choir, rising into the dark. Maybe that is why meteors move us so deeply, because every streak of fire is not just light, but the echo of countless desires that came before, all riding the same path into oblivion. History tells us that people have always gathered beneath falling stars. Ancient Persians believed meteors were the sparks of celestial battles. In Japan, some wished upon them quickly, believing a fleeting prayer could bring lifelong luck. In Greece, philosophers claimed the gods opened the heavens at those moments to watch us, and that stars were our chance to be seen. Across cultures, across ages, one truth remained. A falling star is not just an object. It is a moment of connection between heaven and earth, between strangers, between lives that will never cross otherwise. So, what happens when two wishes overlap? What happens when your desire and theirs are carried on the same blaze of dust? Do they fuse together, changing shape? Do they strengthen one another, like two threads braided into one? Or does the universe simply record them, pairing them forever in a ledger no one will ever read? Somewhere in the mystery of that night, you and the stranger became part of the same story, however briefly. The irony is that you will never meet. You will never know that your wish was doubled in the sky, mirrored by another heartbeat across the planet. But that does not mean it lacked meaning, because perhaps the point was never the wish itself, but the bond it forged in silence. For 1 second, distance collapsed. The world shrank to a single fire in the sky, and two people who would never touch hands were nonetheless joined in hope. And maybe that is the truest magic of falling stars. Not that they grant wishes, but that they remind us we are not the only ones making them. That somewhere, always, someone else is lifting their head at the same second, pouring their own longing into the fire. That our loneliness is never absolute, because above us streaks a reminder that our private hopes are shared more often than we dare believe. So, hold on to that. Remember that night. Because once, you wished on a falling star, and at that very same moment, so did a stranger on the far side of the earth. And though you will never meet, though you will never hear their voice, your wishes are bound together forever, carried away on the same trail of light. Compass point shift. You held a compass in your hand, its needle trembling in small, precise circles, trying to decide where north was. For as long as you had known, the compass had been a faithful servant, unshaken, reliable, a guide that pointed towards certainty even when the world was unknown. But then, in an instant, it faltered. The needle spun wildly, like a dancer losing balance, circling with urgency as though it had been pulled by something invisible. For a heartbeat, you felt it. Uncertainty, disorientation, the sense that the world had shifted beneath your feet. You did not know that, across the ocean, someone else was holding their compass at the very same moment. And theirs too spun wildly, circling with the same frenzy, refusing to settle. You were strangers, separated by vast waters, yet bound to the same invisible tug. Both of you felt the world lurch. Both of you stared at the trembling needle, wondering if something greater than iron and magnetism had taken hold. What was it that pulled you both? A magnetic anomaly, perhaps, buried deep in the Earth's mantle, a cosmic storm, its invisible winds bending the field of navigation. Or perhaps something stranger, something that did not belong to this world alone, something that reached across dimensions and whispered to your instruments. Whatever it was, the effect was the same. Two people, unknown to each other, linked by a moment of shared confusion, both compasses pointing not to north, but to one another. We live our lives trusting orientation. The sun will rise in the east, shadows will fall west, north will remain north. But what happens when the tools we trust betray us? What happens when certainty collapses into chaos, even for a second? For you, it may have been a brief inconvenience, an odd story to shrug away. For them, it may have been revelation. They may have believed the anomaly was not random, but purposeful, that the compass was pointing not to the earth, but to destiny. And so, they began to follow. Imagine this: a stranger walks into their life with a wild story. My compass spun, and I knew something was calling. They speak of it as if it were prophecy, and while you went on with your day, they set their course according to the anomaly. They became the seeker, convinced that somewhere in the world, another hand had held another compass, pulled by the same mysterious force. They searched for signs of you in maps, in currents, in stars. Their life bent around the certainty that the anomaly meant connection. And perhaps they were right. After all, anomalies are not accidents. They are fractures in the ordinary, brief glimpses of the extraordinary breaking through. History remembers these moments not as curiosities, but as turning points. The needle spins, the stars align, the winds shift, and someone, somewhere, chooses to listen. Entire voyages were launched this way, discoveries made not from certainty, but from disorientation. And always in those moments, two lives were joined by the same invisible thread. The sailor who saw the same star, the wanderer who felt the same wind, the stranger whose compass trembled in the same storm. Consider the possibility that the earth itself was speaking, that its molten heart, turning deep below the crust, reached up to both of you at once, that the same iron singing beneath oceans tied your bodies into one experience. Or consider something stranger still, that the anomaly was not of earth at all, that it was a signal, a whisper through the fabric of dimensions, testing who was listening. Perhaps your compass was never meant only to guide you across geography, but to remind you that orientation is not fixed, that direction is a question, and that connection can reach across oceans without words. The truth is that compasses spin wildly in all of us, not the ones made of iron and glass, but the internal ones, the compass of longing, the compass of belonging. Haven't you felt it? A sudden pull towards something unexplainable, a restlessness you cannot name, the sense that your heart is pointing somewhere you have never been, to someone you have never met. That pull is the same anomaly. That wild spin is the same whisper. And just as you once held a trembling needle in your hand, so too does someone else hold theirs. And in that moment, both of you are bound, even across oceans. The stranger who felt their compass spin that day never forgot. To them, it was a sacred fracture in the ordinary, a reminder that the world holds secrets beyond science, beyond reason. They told the story to their children, and their children carried it like a parable. That one day your compass may betray you, but in its betrayal, it may point you to something greater. Their bloodline carried the myth, and you, unknowingly, became part of it. The one whose compass spun too. The one they never found, but always believed was out there. And you left the shore, tucked the compass away, and went on with your life. You never knew that across the ocean, someone else had felt the same tug. You never knew that your disorientation became their faith. Yet, in another thread of existence, the two of you are forever bound. Not by meeting, not by name, but by a moment when the world itself reached through and reminded you that orientation is fragile, but connection is eternal. So the next time your inner compass spins without reason, when your sense of direction fails you, pause. Do not dismiss it as error. Perhaps it is anomaly. Perhaps it is invitation. Perhaps, somewhere across the seas of reality, another soul is staring at their trembling needle, waiting, just as you once did, for the world to whisper again, seeded by chance. At first, it seemed like nothing more than spring being spring. A flower breaking open in your garden, its petals trembling in the cool breath of dawn. You leaned closer, perhaps even smiled, thinking it only another turn of the season, another small rhythm of life. But elsewhere, miles away, in an abandoned field no hand had tended for decades, the same flower opened at the very same hour, its rare twin rising from forgotten soil, breaking the silence of ruin with a bloom identical to yours. The two blossoms had never shared water, never felt the same sun, never known each other's roots. One grew in care, fed by your hand, protected from frost. The other rose in solitude, in a place swallowed by weeds and the quiet indifference of time. Yet, on that morning, they bloomed together, their petals unfurling in unison, as if rehearsed. Two lives tethered by a thread unseen, separated by distance but stitched by timing. It is easy to call it coincidence. Nature plays dice constantly. Seeds scatter by wind, by bird, by accident. Rain falls in one place, drought lingers in another. Patterns emerge without intention. Yet, there is something about synchronicity that unsettles us because it feels like the world whispering a secret, too precise, too poetic to dismiss entirely. What are the chances that two rare flowers, living apart, would choose the same dawn to open? What rhythm guides their unfolding? Myth would say it is a sign, that twin blooms mark twin fates, that something destined is about to converge. Ancient stories tell of flowers as omens, symbols of love, loss, or renewal. In some traditions, when two identical plants bloom in different places at once, it means a soul has split across distance, living two lives in parallel. Others say it marks a meeting point, where paths long separated are preparing to cross again. Science gives another voice. Perhaps the air carried the same invisible signals, the subtle lengthening of days, the particular temperature of night, the precise mixture of soil and moisture that triggered both buds to stir. Different places, same conditions, one silent clock striking the same hour. Yet, even this explanation bends toward mystery. Because in the infinite randomness of weather, what are the odds of such rare precision? And so, you are left with the image, your garden bloom and its forgotten twin. Two soft lanterns rising into morning at the same time, unaware of each other, yet linked in ways you cannot measure. One tended, one abandoned, one under watchful eyes, one unseen, yet equal in beauty, equal in timing. Perhaps this is the lesson, that chance is not emptiness, but a hidden architecture, that somewhere beneath the scatter of seeds and the chaos of time, the world arranges small symmetries, offering glimpses of its deeper order. And perhaps, without knowing it, you are already part of that order, your life blooming in sync with another you cannot see, your choices echoing in places you will never step. The flower in your garden will fade, as all flowers do. The one in the field may be trampled, forgotten, lost. But for that one morning, they were mirrors across distance, two petals of the same unseen design. And if you were quiet enough, if you looked closely, you might almost believe the world was reminding you that nothing ever blooms alone. Dreamed before meeting, imagine drifting into sleep, the world dissolving into images and sounds that make no sense, until one moment stands out with unnatural clarity. A voice. Not your own, not someone you know, but a stranger's. Their words slip into your dream like an echo from another life. Maybe they say something simple, an observation, a sentence that seems almost ordinary. But when you wake, you remember it vividly. The cadence, the tone, the exact syllables. It clings to you, haunting, though you cannot place it. Days later, you are moving through the world, through a cafe, a train station, a crowded street, and then it happens. You hear the voice again, exactly the same words, spoken in the same rhythm, but this time from a living person standing before you. A stranger, yet not a stranger at all, for you've already met them in a dream. The shock is not just recognition, it is dislocation. Your mind scrambles to make sense of it. Had you seen them before, without realizing? Did you overhear their voice once and forget, only for your dream to reconstruct it? Or did the dream pierce through time itself, carrying their words to you before the meeting ever occurred? The uncanny precision refuses to be dismissed. This is not déjà vu, not a trick of memory. It is as if the future reached backward, whispering into your sleep. And here lies the unsettling question. If dreams can show us strangers before we meet them, then what else are they showing us? Are they rehearsals for moments to come? Echoes of lives we have not yet lived? Glimpses into connections that already exist, waiting for the physical world to catch up? History is thick with stories like yours. People dreaming of voices, faces, words, and then encountering them days, months, even years later. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, meaningful coincidence without explanation. Mystics claim it is the soul recognizing patterns before the mind does. Neuroscientists speak of the brain weaving fragments into predictions. But no explanation fully captures the intensity of that moment, the collision between dream and waking life, when the boundary between the two collapses. Picture it. You sit across from this stranger, hearing them speak, and your body reacts before your mind does. A shiver, a tightening of breath, a sense that you've stepped into a script already written. They may never know. To them, it is just conversation. To you, it is revelation, that the line between what we dream and what we live is thinner than we dare believe. And perhaps the most haunting part is this. If you dreamed them before you met, then maybe they dreamed you too. Maybe they woke with the memory of your voice, only to dismiss it as nothing. And now, standing before you, their own sense of déjà vu lingers unspoken. Two dreamers crossing the boundary into one another's waking lives, finally colliding where their subconscious had already introduced them. What does that mean for love, for fate, for the way we think of strangers? It suggests that every encounter may be foreshadowed, rehearsed in sleep, stitched into our minds before our bodies ever cross paths. Perhaps dreams are not just the brain's noise, but the universe rehearsing its meetings, ensuring that when the moment comes, it feels inevitable. So the next time you dream of a voice, pay attention. It may belong to someone waiting just around the corner of time, ready to speak words you've already heard in sleep. And when it happens, you will know. The meeting was not chance. It was always coming. The dream was simply the first hello. Game across worlds. They called it the game across worlds, though to you it was nothing more than a casual toss of dice. A moment at a kitchen table, laughter in the air, the clatter of numbers against wood. But on that same night, across an ocean, a gambler's hand shook with desperation in a neon-lit casino. He threw his final dice, staking his last fortune on chance. And when the cubes settled, they showed the exact same result as yours. Two rolls, continents apart, recorded by fate as one. To you, it meant little. A game, a fleeting victory, a shrug. To him, it was everything. The end of a journey, the collapse of his luck, the breaking of a life shaped by numbers. Yet the dice did not care who held them. To the universe, both rolls belonged to the same gesture, two echoes of one movement, stitched together across distance. What does that mean when chance aligns so perfectly? Is it coincidence, or is it proof that probability is less random than we believe? Mathematicians would call it inevitability. With enough dice cast across the world, some must match. But gamblers know better. They know that chance is never just numbers. It is a story told by fate. And sometimes fate repeats itself with eerie precision. Two dice tumbling, two hands shaking, two hearts waiting, and the outcome the same. Identical results, but carried on currents of meaning worlds apart. The gambler's story ended with that throw. He walked away from the table, empty, broken, forever marked by the numbers that stared back at him. Your story, meanwhile, went on unchanged, unbothered. You may not even remember what you rolled, but in another strand, those two outcomes fused. His despair and your laughter, his ending and your beginning became twin notes in the same chord, proof that the game is bigger than we think. And does this not mirror the hidden synchronies of our lives? How many times have you spoken words at the exact moment someone far away spoke them too? How many times has a choice you made aligned perfectly with the choice of a stranger across the world? We call them coincidences, but what if they are lightning's double strike in another form? Not in storms, but in chance. Not in light, but in dice. The gambler believed the universe was mocking him, that his loss was sealed not just by chance, but by design. He felt haunted, as though someone, somewhere, had stolen his luck by rolling it in their own hand. You, unknowingly, were that thief. Not of money, but of destiny. For if numbers can align across continents, then lives can too. What seems like separation may only be a thin veil, pierced whenever the universe chooses to echo itself. Philosophers have long wondered if chance exists at all, or if what we call randomness is only the unfolding of patterns too vast for us to see. A dice roll may feel arbitrary, but its outcome is shaped by weight, angle, air, surface. If you could measure perfectly, you could predict perfectly. So, when two rolls match, is it truly chance, or is it the universe whispering that inevitability was always hidden behind chaos? Some cultures say dice are not games, but divinations, that each number carries meaning, and when they appear together, they signal alignment between lives. If so, then your role in the gamblers were not accidents, but messages. Two strangers bound by a number, never to meet. yet forever connected by the rhythm of chance, a secret signature across the globe carried in bone-white cubes. And isn't that true of us all? That while we live separate, our choices, our losses, our triumphs often echo in others? That your joy may arrive in the same hour as another's grief, your success in the same moment as another's collapse? To the earth, they are separate. To the universe, they are the same gesture, mirrored across worlds. Some whisper that the gambler's ghost still walks casinos, searching for the one whose dice matched his last throw. Others believe that dice themselves remember, that each cube carries echoes of every roll, and when you hold them, you are holding the weight of countless unseen lives. Perhaps your hand is never your own in such games. Perhaps you are always playing across worlds, with strangers you will never meet, bound by numbers you never chose. So, the next time you roll, pause before the dice fall. Ask yourself, whose fate will echo with yours tonight? Whose laughter or sorrow will be stitched into your gesture? For in the end, dice are not just games. They are tiny oracles, cubes of chance revealing that, across oceans and continents, lives are less separate than we think. And when the numbers match, it is not coincidence. It is reminder. That chance is only another word for connection, and every roll is a bridge across worlds. Cosmic radio pulse. It was nothing, or so you thought. Your fingers drummed a rhythm on the desk. Tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. A restless gesture, born of boredom or thought, a small sound in the silence of your room. But at that very same instant, on the other side of the world, astronomers sat hunched over receivers and glowing screens, listening to the sky. Through static, through hiss, through the long silence of deep space, they caught it. A pulse. Rhythmic. Repeating. The universe seemed to answer, echoing your desk-bound percussion with a beat from a distant star. Coincidence? Perhaps. Yet the alignment lingers like a question with no answer. What are the odds that your idle drumming, your unthinking rhythm, would match the signature of a cosmic signal traveling thousands of years through darkness? The scientists stared at their instruments in awe. You sat unaware, tapping, lost in your own world. Two realities intersected. Two pulses became twins. Radio astronomy is full of ghosts like this. Signals arriving without origin, patterns written in static. When Jocelyn Bell first discovered pulsars, the bursts were so regular she called them LGM, little green men, wondering if perhaps it was a message. Decades later, we still listen to fast radio bursts, millisecond flares from across galaxies, each one a mystery. They could be collapsing stars, magnetic storms, or something stranger, but to us, they are rhythm, order hidden in the noise, the universe tapping its own desk, daring us to notice. And so, you tapped, and they detected, your hand on wood, their instruments on starlight. For you, it was nothing more than a way to measure thought. For them, it was an anomaly, a pattern worth cataloging, dissecting, arguing about. Yet for that 1 second, the line blurred. Your rhythm became theirs. The human pulse and the cosmic pulse synchronized as if separated by distance, but not by meaning. Do you see the strangeness of it? That the smallest gesture in your world could mirror the heartbeat of a dying star? That your fingertips echo the collapse of suns? We imagine ourselves distant from the cosmos, but perhaps we are tuned to it more deeply than we realize. The rhythm you tap may not be random. It may be resonance, a body remembering the song of the universe it was born from. After all, our atoms were forged in stars. Perhaps they still remember the cadence of fire. Imagine the astronomers sitting in their observatory, startled as the pulse repeats. To them, it is history arriving late, light that left a star long before our species even learned to speak. To you, it was present, immediate, unconscious. But somehow, both became one moment, one alignment, as though time itself allowed two halves of a signal to meet. A question forms. Did you echo the star, or did the star echo you? Philosophers and mystics have always believed the universe speaks in rhythm. The beating drum in ancient ritual was said to mimic the heartbeat of creation. The chants of monks, repeated syllables and endless cycles, were meant to harmonize with the turning of spheres. Even the ticking of clocks, harsh and mechanical, is but an attempt to bind ourselves to a rhythm we know runs deeper. And in that instant, your tapping joined that tradition, aligning with a pulse that traveled across galaxies to find you. The irony, of course, is that you will never know. The astronomers will publish their papers, theories will rise and fall, but your rhythm on the desk will be forgotten even before the echo fades. Yet, in some hidden ledger of coincidences, that alignment remains. You, the unknown tapper, were part of a cosmic duet, a fleeting symmetry between mindless gesture and interstellar event. So the next time your fingers find a rhythm, remember, you may not be drumming alone. Somewhere, across the black silence, stars are collapsing, magnetic fields are twisting, bursts of energy are flaring like cosmic metronomes. And maybe, just maybe, you were catching their beat, because once you tapped your desk at the same moment astronomers caught a pulse from the sky. And in that instant, you and the universe shared a rhythm. Masked twin encounter. It began as play, perhaps. A mask chosen in secrecy, a costume pulled together from scraps and imagination. You dressed yourself not for history, not for recognition, but for a moment, an evening, a celebration, a private experiment in becoming someone else. The mask covered your face, reshaped you into something unnameable. You walked through the night with the quiet thrill of anonymity, savoring the strange freedom of being seen but not known. You thought you were alone in this invention, the first and only to wear such a guise. But across the world, at that same hour, another figure moved through another crowd in the very same costume, the same mask, the same silhouette, the same strangeness of invention. They too believed themselves unique. They too felt the power of being unrecognizable, of carrying an identity that did not belong to the everyday. And though oceans divided you, though no message was sent, you were bound by a coincidence that looked less like chance and more like reflection. Two masked twins, appearing in different places, unaware of one another, yet linked by something deeper than fabric and paint. What does it mean when invention duplicates itself in secret, when two minds separated by continents arrive at the same creation, as if some unseen hand guided them? History is full of such echoes. Twin discoveries born thousands of miles apart. Languages evolving with the same sounds, despite never meeting. Myths of gods with different names, but identical stories carved on stones oceans apart. The masked twin encounter is not only a costume, it is proof of the hidden symmetries of the human soul. Proof that imagination is not isolated, but connected by threads that move silently between us. Think of what it felt like for you, wearing that mask. You were no longer yourself. You were larger, stranger, freer. You could laugh without the burden of your name, move without the weight of your history. For a few hours, you lived in the freedom of being unbound, and across the world, your twin felt the same. They too discovered what it meant to be untethered, to live in disguise, not as deception, but as possibility. And though you never met, though you never even knew, your lives touched in that shared transformation. But imagine if one day the story reached you, if a photograph surfaced, a painting, a whispered tale from across the seas of someone else who had worn your mask, your costume, at the very same moment. Would it unsettle you? Would you believe it was coincidence? Or would you suspect something stranger, that you and they had brushed against the same dimension of thought, that the mask was not invention at all but inheritance, a pattern waiting for both of you to discover? The truth is that masks are older than we are. They belong to the oldest rituals of humanity, the ceremonies where people wore faces of gods, animals, spirits, to bridge the gap between what is real and what is possible. To wear a mask is to enter a lineage of mystery, of transformation, of contact with the unseen. And perhaps, when you wore yours and they wore theirs, you stepped into that lineage at the very same moment. Perhaps the mask itself was calling, waiting to be remembered, and both of you answered at once. The encounter was invisible to you. You lived your night, removed the mask, tucked it away, forgot. But they did not forget. To them, it was revelation. They felt the weight of synchronicity, the tug of meaning behind coincidence. They told their family, their friends, that somewhere another soul was out there in the same disguise. And over time, the story grew into myth. The masked twin was not merely a stranger. They became proof that connection defies distance, that imagination is shared, that we are never truly alone in what we invent. And here is the unsettling beauty. How many such twins have you already had? How many strangers across the world have written the same words, sung the same melody, dreamed the same dream, worn the same costume without knowing? We think of ourselves as isolated, but our lives echo in others constantly. Ideas rise not in solitude, but in chorus. And sometimes, when the chorus grows too vast, two voices sing the same note at the very same time. The masked twin never met you. They never saw your face. But in their memory, you exist. They carry the certainty that somewhere in the vast map of the world, another walked in the same guise, breathing the same air of mystery. To them, you are immortal, not by name, but by image, the unknown companion who appeared across the seas at the same moment. And you may never know. But every time you see a mask, every time you step into anonymity, remember this: you are not alone. Somewhere, someone else may be stepping into the same strangeness, carrying your echo without knowing it. The masked twin encounter is not accident. It is testament. That imagination is not bound by distance, that coincidence is a language of connection, and that sometimes, without meeting, we still arrive at each other's faces. So wear your mask freely, for even in disguise, you are recognized. Even in anonymity, you are not alone. And perhaps tonight, in some distant crowd, another figure is waiting, breathing behind the same mask, believing themselves unique, while the universe quietly smiles, knowing you are already twins. Shared lunar glimpse. It begins in the hush of night, when the world seems to pause beneath a silver lantern. A child looks up at the moon, their small hands pressed together, their lips moving around a wish they dare not say aloud to anyone else. It is a fragile moment, tender and private, one they will likely forget by morning. Yet, at that same instant, far across oceans, another child tilts their head toward the same moon, under the same glow, and breathes out the same secret wish. Two voices, separated by continents, rising together in silence. The moon has always been a mirror for longing. It does not speak, yet it listens. It does not move closer, yet it feels near. Children especially trust it, as if the round, pale face belongs to some patient guardian. They send their hopes upward, believing somehow that distance makes them purer, that the sky is a safer keeper than any human ear. But on that night, the moon did more than reflect. It connected. The same thought, the same yearning, whispered twice in the same heartbeat. How do we explain such a convergence? Chance is the easy answer. Millions of children make millions of wishes each night. Somewhere, someday, two are bound to align. Yet, if you step inside the moment, if you stand in the hush where those children stood, you cannot dismiss it so easily. Because the wishes were not vague. They were mirrored, precise, as if one child's breath had carried across the air, riding light, landing softly in the other's mouth. Perhaps minds echo across distances more easily than we admit. Psychologists speak of coincidence, Jung of synchronicity, mystics of threads that bind unseen. The idea that thought, once released, might not stay caged, but ripple outward until it finds a resonance. Two children, innocent and unguarded, may be the most open receivers of such echoes. Their wishes, fragile as feathers, drift until they land in kindred hearts. Cultures have long believed the moon to be a bridge. Lovers separated by war would look at it together, believing the moonlight was a shared touch. Poets whispered that the moon carried messages, that it stitched together eyes across continents. Sailors called it a compass of longing. For children, it becomes something simpler, proof that they are not alone. And when two voices whisper the same wish beneath its glow, perhaps the moon is simply doing what it has always done, reflecting, mirroring, binding. And what of those wishes? Maybe they were for comfort, maybe for a lost parent or a friend, maybe for nothing more than a toy or for tomorrow to come quickly. But the content matters less than the symmetry, because in that symmetry lies something haunting, proof that in the vast chaos of the world, two souls can bend toward the same desire at the same time, unaware of each other, yet connected by light. In the years to come, both children will forget that moment. They will grow, stumble, fall in love, suffer, triumph. They may never meet. They may never know that, for one instant, they shared the same heartbeat of hope across oceans. But somewhere deep within them, the wish will live on, like a faint thread stitched into their memory, tugging gently whenever they look up at the night sky. And perhaps that is the truest magic of all. Not that the wish will come true, but that it already did, because for one moment, neither child was alone. Bridge of silence. Imagine yourself stepping onto a bridge, the air cool, the world hushed. Your footsteps sound small against the stone or steel beneath you, but soon even that fades into quiet. You pause, breathing in the stillness, the kind that feels sacred, where even the wind holds its breath, where silence itself seems alive. You believe you are alone. Yet, at that very moment, in another land, far beyond sight or knowledge, a stranger steps onto a different bridge. Their hand brushes the rail, their chest rises with the same deep inhale, and they too are surrounded by that same unbroken quiet. Two souls, separated by continents, tethered by an invisible rhythm of silence. You do not see them. They do not see you. Yet, your breaths align, your solitude mirrors theirs, and across the gap of distance, it is as though you are walking together. There is something profound in this thought. Silence does not belong to one place. It spills across the world like a hidden river, waiting for those who will enter it. When you walked onto your bridge, you thought the stillness was yours alone. But silence, unlike sound, is infinite. It can be shared without being divided. And so, as you stood in that suspended calm, another entered the same vast silence, miles away. Two lives brushing together not with words, not with sight, but with breath held in the same invisible pause. Think of the symbolism of bridges themselves. They are crossings, thresholds, liminal spaces suspended between two worlds. They carry us over rivers, valleys, divides, places where falling would mean death. But beyond their structure, bridges have always been metaphors for connection. They join what is separated. They allow passage where there would otherwise be distance. So when you stepped onto your bridge in silence, and a stranger stepped onto theirs, perhaps you were walking not only in parallel, but across an unseen bridge between souls. Philosophers, poets, and mystics have long spoken of silence as more than absence. It is presence. It is communion without words. Monks in distant monasteries meditate on silence, believing that when two people sit quietly, they are more connected than in conversation. Lovers share it on riverbanks. Pilgrims find it in temples. And here, you and the stranger, without knowing, entered the same cathedral of quiet, separated by land but joined in stillness. Science, too, gives us glimpses of this hidden bond. Studies show that when people meditate in different places, their heart rhythms can begin to align, their brain waves showing uncanny similarities. Prayer circles around the globe, though disconnected, pulse with synchronous stillness. It suggests that silence may not simply live within us, it may exist as a field we step into, one that others can enter at the same moment, no matter how far apart. And perhaps that is what happened on the bridge. You stepped into stillness, and so did they. And for that brief stretch of time, you were not strangers. You were companions in a silence so wide it covered oceans. Neither of you will ever know. You may never cross paths, may never even imagine one another. Yet, for a fleeting moment, you shared the same pause in the world, the same unspoken reverence. There is a quiet beauty in this. That connection does not always need meeting. Sometimes it exists in parallel solitude, in the unseen harmony of separate lives moving in rhythm. You walked your bridge. They walked theirs, and in that silence, you met without meeting. And maybe this is the deeper meaning of silence. It is the bridge itself. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of something larger that holds us all. When you breathe into it, you are never alone. When they breathed into it, neither were they. The bridge of silence was already there, waiting for both of you to cross. The stranger's name, they called it the stranger's name, though it was never meant to be a story at all. Imagine this. You wake in the morning, your lips still heavy with sleep, and the very first word you speak drifts into the air. A word chosen not by thought but by instinct, slipping past the threshold between dream and waking. To you, it feels meaningless, a fragment left over from the night. But at that same moment, thousands of miles away, another person lay down to sleep, whispering that exact same word as their last. One life beginning its day with sound, another ending its night with the same. Two strangers, bound by syllables, never meeting, yet stitched together by the rhythm of speech. To you, it was just the ordinary act of waking, of letting your voice break silence. To them, it was the final act before surrendering to dreams. And yet the word was the same. A name, perhaps. A place. Or something so small, so fragile, it might have been forgotten within the hour. But satellites did not record it. Historians did not write it down. Only the air itself carried it, for one instant, as if the world wanted to remind us that we are less alone in our words than we believe. Consider what it means for language to align like this. We imagine speech as personal, private, belonging only to our own minds. But what if our words are less inventions and more echoes, reverberating across the world, finding mouths to pass through? Two people, thousands of miles apart, speaking the same word at the same moment. Was it coincidence? Or was it reminder that language itself is a shared current, flowing through us all? The person who fell asleep may have dreamed differently because of it. Their last word carried them into another world, one of shadows and fragments. Your first word carried you out of yours, into light and action. One descended, the other ascended, and the same sound formed the bridge. What does that make the word? Not possession, but portal. Not accident, but alignment. And is this not how stories themselves are built? Think of myths across cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, yet carrying the same themes, the same names of gods, the same stories of floods and fire. How could people who never touched the same land, never spoke the same tongue, tell echoes of the same tale? Perhaps they did not invent them separately. Perhaps words themselves are shared, drifting like clouds, waiting for the right voice to call them down. The stranger whose last word matched yours never knew you existed. They closed their eyes, believing the world ended at the edge of their own life. But in another corner, you woke with their syllable on your tongue, carrying them unknowingly into your morning. Maybe they were a poet whose unfinished verse was passed to you without your consent. Maybe they were a mother, a wanderer, a child. Maybe the word was their name, and for one instant you spoke it for them, preserving them beyond their sleep. And what of us? How many times have we spoken words that belonged, secretly, to someone else? How many times have our first thoughts in waking carried the last breath of another? We like to think of language as invention, but perhaps it is more like inheritance, handed to us from unseen lives, stitched across time zones and continents. The stranger's name is not anomaly. It is truth. That speech itself is never ours alone. Some say the world keeps balance this way, that every word leaving one mouth is caught by another, that silence is never complete because someone else is always filling it with the same sound, that beginnings and endings are linked not by intention but by coincidence so precise it feels like design. Others whisper that the phenomenon is proof of a deeper weave, that the world is less random than it appears, that our words are coordinates, mapping invisible connections we rarely notice. And isn't it true in our own lives? Think of déjà vu, when a phrase feels worn, as if you've said it before, though you haven't. Think of conversations where two people speak the same word at the same instant, startled into laughter. Think of names that return to you in dreams, unfamiliar yet familiar, leaving you wondering if you've borrowed them from someone else's life. The stranger's name is not fantasy. It is the daily reality of language, which is always both ours and not ours. The person who whispered the word before sleep is gone now, lost in dreams or in the deeper silence beyond them, but their words survived, carried forward in your morning, given new breath without your knowing. You became their echo, their continuation. They, in turn, became your beginning. And though you will never meet, you are forever bound by a syllable that neither of you can truly claim. So, tomorrow, when you wake, pause before you speak. Listen to the word that leaves you. Ask yourself, whose ending did I just inherit? Whose silence did I just break? For language is not just communication. It is connection, repetition, alignment. The stranger's name reminds us that every word is older than we think. Every syllable shared across unseen lives. And sometimes, when day and night overlap, our voices carry further than we realize, bridging thousands of miles, stitching strangers into a single, fragile, infinite story. Number in the air. It was only a game, a passing thought. Someone asked you to guess, and without hesitation, you plucked a number from the air. A simple choice, a flash of intuition, nothing you expected to remember by nightfall. But in that same instant, across a city, or maybe across an ocean, another hand hovered over a page, pen scratching down the very same number into a waiting notebook. Two actions, separated by distance, braided into one moment. One number, born twice. How do we explain this? Chance, probability, coincidence? The words come easy, but they soothe nothing. Numbers are not neutral. They hum with history, superstition, myth. To guess one is to step into a current deeper than we admit. Some believe certain numbers carry power. 7 for luck, 13 for omen, 3 for unity, 0 for the void. Mathematicians call them abstract, but we treat them like living things. We inscribe them on dice, on clocks, on cards, on doors. We let them decide our futures. Salaries, lottery tickets, anniversaries, codes. Numbers guide the unseen shape of our days, yet we rarely pause to notice. Now, imagine the other person, the one with the notebook. Perhaps they were calculating something mundane, a budget, a sequence, an equation. Perhaps they were recording a dream, transcribing an image that insisted on being preserved. Or perhaps, like you, they too plucked the number from air, compelled by something they did not understand. They will never know your guess. You will never see their page. Yet, for one heartbeat, the two of you collided in perfect symmetry. Is it simply random, or is it resonance? Maybe numbers are not inventions of the human mind, but discoveries, patterns that exist regardless of who writes or says them. If so, then when you guessed and they wrote, perhaps you both touched the same current at once, like two fingers dipping into a river, separated by miles, but feeling the same water. The number was never yours, never theirs. It belonged to the fabric of reality itself. And in that moment, it chose to surface in two minds at once. We are taught that numbers are cold, lifeless symbols. Yet history tells a different story. Ancient Pythagoreans swore the universe was built from numbers, that every soul and every star could be reduced to ratios and harmonies. Mystics assigned each number a sacred meaning, 1 for creation, 2 for duality, 9 for completion. In some traditions, to speak or write a number at the right moment was to open a door between worlds. So when you guessed, and the stranger wrote, perhaps it was not mere chance. Perhaps it was a ritual you both performed unknowingly. Think of the strangeness, two people, linked only by the invisible thread of timing, creating a match that neither will ever know about. For you, the number floated away, forgotten as quickly as it came. For them, it remained ink on paper, a mark preserved, maybe even returned to days later. You never meet, but for 1 second your minds bent in the same direction, proof that thoughts can synchronize without contact. It makes you wonder, how many of your choices are not yours alone? How many times has someone, somewhere, mirrored you in silence, unseen? Perhaps we live in a world of convergences too subtle to notice. 2 songs hummed at once in different rooms. 2 prayers whispered at the same second in different tongues. 2 numbers called into being by strangers who will never know of each other. We dismiss these as accidents, but maybe they are the universe reminding us of its hidden unity, the way it likes to fold distance into nothing for just an instant. Tomorrow, you will guess another number. They will write another. The threads will scatter again. But the memory of that one moment, that one number, remains etched in reality, a secret shared without acknowledgement. And though you will never see the notebook, though they will never hear your voice, both of you left the same trace in the same second. And that is enough. Because once, you guessed a number in play, and someone else wrote it down at the same time. A coincidence, perhaps. Or maybe a reminder that even our smallest choices belong to something larger, something endlessly patient, waiting for us to notice when the invisible lines finally overlap. Cosmic mirror births. At the very same second, in 2 distant corners of the earth, 2 children were born. One entered the world beneath the swelling glow of sunrise, light spilling across the horizon, as if the heavens themselves had opened to welcome them. The other emerged beneath a sky of fading fire, as sunset sank into the bones of the sea. They did not know of each other. Their families would never meet. Oceans, languages, and lifetimes separated them. Yet, in that instant, they cried together. The same first breath, the same startled sound, a mirrored chorus across the planet. It seems like coincidence. But was it? The symmetry was too precise, as though the universe itself had choreographed it. One child to greet the day, another to usher it away. One birth in the east, another in the west. The earth turning beneath them like a cosmic stage, placing them on opposite ends of a shared mirror. 2 beginnings, 2 cries, 1 moment. What does it mean to be born in such reflection? Perhaps it is proof that birth itself is never singular, that every cry, every first breath, reverberates across the world, echoed in strangers we will never know. The cosmic mirror, births remind us that even at the most personal of thresholds, we are not alone. Somewhere, someone else is taking their first breath as you take yours, their cry joining yours in the chorus of existence. Think of the parents, on one side of the earth, exhausted yet elated, watching the room fill with dawn as the child opened its eyes. On the other, tired faces illuminated not by sunrise, but by the dimming gold of dusk, watching as the child entered just as light was leaving. Neither family knew that their child had a twin of timing, a mirror born in another land. But bloodlines remember differently, for in another dimension, the story was preserved, not as chance, but as destiny. The two children grew, each under the weight of a story they did not understand. One was told that they carried the strength of beginnings, that they were born with the rising sun in their veins. The other was told they carried the wisdom of endings, that they had been born with the sunset in their lungs. And though they lived apart, strangers forever, they sometimes felt it, a pull, a shadow of recognition in their own bones. A restless sense that somewhere in the world walked another who had cried with them, who had shared their birth in the cosmic mirror. We tend to think of time as solitary. My birthday. My moment. But the truth is, no moment is ever yours alone. Every second births countless lives, countless endings, countless first cries. We are always twinned, always echoed. And sometimes, the echo is exact, uncanny in its symmetry. Two souls flung into the world at the same instant, divided only by the direction of the sun, one painted by dawn, the other by dusk, both carrying the same pulse. History remembers mirrored births as omens. Ancient astrologers read them as proof of balance, of duality, of opposites destined to complete one another. In some myths, the sunrise child becomes the bringer of change, while the sunset child becomes the guardian of memory. In others, such births mark the arrival of twins split by the earth itself, destined to seek each other across lifetimes. Whether myth or coincidence, the symmetry has always haunted human imagination. And perhaps you too were born with such an echo. Have you ever felt it? That sense that someone else, somewhere carries your rhythm? That another life began with yours, not in the same room, not in the same city, but in the same breath of time? Perhaps that is why some connections feel instant, why some strangers feel like recognition instead of meeting. Perhaps they are the ones who cried with us, mirrored across the turning earth. The cosmic mirror births remind us that we belong to something larger than our families, larger than our nations. We belong to the choreography of the earth itself, spinning us into existence not alone, but together. One cry east, one cry west, the earth turning as midwife, the sky splitting into sunrise and sunset to witness. And though those two children may never find each other, they are forever linked, not by blood, not by land, but by the simple, undeniable fact that they began together. So, when you think of your beginning, do not think of it as solitary. Think of the countless cries that rose alongside yours, the mirrored births that keep you company in secret. Somewhere, someone shares your moment of arrival, someone whose life is a reflection of yours in ways neither of you will ever see. And perhaps, in some dimension, your stories converge, the sunrise and the sunset, finally standing side by side, remembering that once, long ago, they entered the world in unison, a mirrored song beneath mirrored skies. Because no one is ever born alone. Every cry is echoed, every breath is shared, and the universe keeps its mirrors polished, waiting for us to remember. Balance of falling. In the stillness of a forest, a tree begins its slow surrender. You might think collapse is sudden, a clean break between standing and fallen. But in truth, it starts long before, the soft rot hidden beneath bark, the secret weakening of roots as the soil loosens, the silent weight of years bending wood toward inevitability. On that morning, the moment finally came. The trunk shuddered, birds startled from the canopy, and the tree gave way with a groan that shook the undergrowth. Its branches clawed the air like a drowning swimmer before crashing into the earth, releasing the thunder that always follows the fall of something so old. At that same instant, oceans away, another forest trembled, another tree, different soil, different sky, yielded to the same gravity. Its roots tore from the earth, its crown flailed downward, and its body struck the ground in perfect synchrony with yours. Two falls, one sound, separate worlds joined by a rhythm you could not measure. How do we account for this? Coincidence is the first explanation. Millions of trees stand in countless forests. Every day some fall unseen, their deaths written only in the silence of moss and soil. Yet, the thought unsettles, that two giants, separated by oceans, chose the same instant to collapse. Not the same morning, not the same hour, but the same second, the same beat in the great pulse of time. Perhaps it is a reminder that balance lives beneath the surface of chaos. Nature does not waste symmetry. A tree falls here, a tree falls there, the scales maintained by an unseen hand. Or perhaps it is deeper, the world itself breathing, exhaling in patterns that stretch beyond human notice. When one body returns to Earth, another answers across the sea, as if the planet itself insists on keeping its weight in harmony. Ancient stories whispered of such echoes. Shamans told of trees as pillars holding sky and earth apart, each fall altering the balance of the world. In some myths, when one sacred tree toppled, another somewhere else would fall to keep the heavens steady. The Norse spoke of Yggdrasil, the world tree, whose tremors were felt in every realm. Perhaps what those stories grasped was this, that forests are not isolated. Roots reach deeper than soil. They may not touch across oceans, but the earth beneath them does. And so, when one tree surrendered, its weight rippled through stone and water until another answered, falling in kind. A conversation of wood and earth, carried in silence. For those who stood near, it was only a tree collapsing. Dust, noise, the sharp scent of sap torn open. But if they had listened more closely, if they had felt the ground beneath their feet, they might have heard the twin impact echoing faintly from far away, two forests acknowledging each other, two deaths occurring in balance, as if neither wanted to be alone in its ending. And maybe that is the truth hidden in this strange symmetry. Nothing falls alone. Not trees, not people, not moments. The world arranges echoes so that every collapse is matched by another, somewhere beyond sight, so the earth does not tremble unevenly. The tree in your forest lies still now, its branches a shelter for moss and insects, its trunk softening into soil. Its twin lies in silence too, oceans away, feeding its own ground. And though you may never walk the space where that second fall occurred, know this. For one instant, the two were bound, falling together into the memory of the earth, striking in harmony, reminding us that balance is written even in endings. Painted the same dream. Imagine an artist in a dim studio, brush in hand, painting a scene that feels more like memory than invention. It comes in fragments at first, a shape in shadow, a tower against a sky that doesn't quite belong to this world, a figure standing at the edge of something vast. Stroke by stroke, the scene takes form until it is whole, haunting in its precision. The artist stares at it afterward, unsettled, wondering where it came from. They swear they've never seen it before. It arrived like a dream that insisted on being made visible. And then, across the globe, at the very same time, another hand moves across paper. Not a brush this time, but a pencil. Lines scratch against the page, hurried, almost frantic, as though trying to keep up with an image rising unbidden in the mind. When the sketch is done, the artist leans back, blinking at the strange composition. They, too, feel the unease of creating something that seems remembered instead of imagined. They do not know it yet, but they have just drawn the same scene. Two artists, worlds apart, neither aware of the other. And yet their works, when finally discovered, are identical. Not just in theme, not just in feeling, but in every line, every shape, every haunting detail. As if the same dream had been projected into two different minds, and both had been compelled to capture it before it vanished. How do we explain this? Coincidence feels too thin, too fragile, to carry the weight of such symmetry. Psychologists might call it cryptomnesia, or archetypes surfacing from the collective unconscious. Jung would call it synchronicity, the meaningful alignment of events that cannot be explained by cause and effect. Mystics would call it evidence of a shared dreamscape, a reservoir of images and truths that we dip into without knowing. And scientists studying creativity might suggest that human minds, when facing similar conditions, sometimes converge upon the same shapes, the same forms. But this goes deeper than convergence. This is duplication. Two works born without contact, yet matching in every detail. It is as though reality itself whispered the same vision into two corners of the world, ensuring it would be captured twice, as though to prove it was never an individual dream, but something larger, something waiting to be remembered. History is not silent on this. Across cultures, myths, and symbols repeat with eerie precision. Civilizations separated by oceans, carved spirals, built pyramids, painted suns with rays like hands. Children across centuries have drawn the same figures in the dark, claiming they saw them in dreams. Even today, artists discover echoes of their own work in strangers' canvases, as though creativity is less invention and more discovery of something already present. Perhaps this is what art truly is. Not private expression, but translation. Not invention, but retrieval. The artist in one city painted the dream. The artist across the world sketched it. Both tuned into the same frequency, like radios catching the same broadcast. And when their works are placed side by side, they prove something unsettling, that imagination may not be as solitary as we believe. Now, imagine the ripple of this discovery. The two artists meet, or perhaps only learn of each other through whispers and images passed around. They stare at the duplication, at the undeniable sameness of their creations, and feel the shock of recognition. They know then that what passed through them was not theirs alone, and the question blooms. How many of our dreams, our visions, our so-called original works are echoes of something shared, something waiting in the spaces between us? It is beautiful, but it is also haunting, because if two strangers can paint the same dream down to each line, then perhaps none of us are ever fully alone in our imaginations. Perhaps the dream is painting us, guiding our hands across the globe in unison, ensuring its image survives in more than one place, more than one mind. And maybe that is why art feels eternal, because every stroke is not only ours, but also theirs, and also the world's. The dream waits, the hand obeys, and across oceans, the same vision emerges again and again, reminding us that creativity is not isolation, but communion. Hourglass Alignment. They called it the Hourglass Alignment, though no grains of sand were involved. It began with two clocks, in two homes, separated by distance and by lives that had never touched. One in a quiet kitchen, the tick of its pendulum marking morning routines, coffee cooling on the table dot, the other in a dim hallway across the world, its hands circling through evenings and shadows. Both ordinary, both unremarkable. Until, in a single instant, they stopped. Their hands froze at the same minute, the same second, as if struck by an invisible hand. To the families who lived beside them, it was nothing but inconvenience. Batteries dead, gears worn out, timepieces finally succumbing to rust and fatigue. But the strange part lingered. Why both at once? Why two clocks, continents apart, halting at the exact same instant, as though the universe had tapped them into silence? To us, it feels like anomaly. To others, it feels like reminder that time is less linear than we believe, and sometimes it pauses in places we do not expect. Think of what a stopped clock means. It is more than a broken mechanism. It is a frozen memory. The moment it halts becomes eternal. A birth may happen in that minute, a death, a word spoken, a silence chosen. For the families, those times remained etched, whether they noticed or not. And when two clocks stop at once, it is as if the same memory has been branded into two lives that will never meet. Two strands of reality pinned by the same nail. Historians know of such echoes. Cities struck by earthquakes across the world record the same times on shattered clock faces. Survivors point to their frozen hands as proof of catastrophe. But here there was no quake, no fire, no storm. Only silence, only coincidence. And yet, when satellites and scientists looked, they noted, at that precise second, the sun flared just slightly brighter, a pulse invisible to the human eye. Was it enough to jar circuits, to halt fragile gears? Or was it only a cosmic coincidence, a light too far away to matter, except as punctuation in our stories? The truth is that clocks are not just machines. They are our companions in illusion. They do not measure time itself, but our attempt to tame it. When two clocks stop at once, perhaps it is not time that pauses, but us. Our illusion cracking, revealing that hours are fragile scaffolds. Imagine if the world did not measure minutes. Imagine if instead, we trusted only our bodies, our memories, our sun and moon. Would we even notice the strange alignment? Or would we live blind to the echoes that stitch lives together in silence? And yet, we do notice. Because deep down, we fear that time is not solid. We fear it may skip, freeze, rewind. That déjà vu is a fracture. That forgotten hours are not accidents of memory, but glitches in the recording. When two clocks stop in sync, it feels like proof. Proof that something larger, unseen, pressed pause, if only for an instant. Consider your own life. Have you ever looked at a clock twice and found the same time staring back? Have you ever woken at the same hour night after night, as if called by something beyond sleep? Have you ever felt the uncanny rhythm of the universe tapping at your routine? These are not just quirks of habit. They are alignments, shadows of a larger pattern, reminders that time is not ours to command. The families of those clocks replaced them eventually. New batteries, new pendulums, time restored. But the moment of silence lingered. Some whispered it was a message, that across oceans, two strangers shared a single heartbeat of stillness. That destiny itself sometimes holds its breath, aligning what should never meet. Others dismissed it as nothing, a trick of chance, a coincidence without meaning. Yet even they found themselves glancing back at the frozen faces, unsettled by the idea that their lives might not be as separate as they seemed. Stories grew. One claimed that at the exact second the clocks froze, a ship in the Pacific turned off course and avoided collision. Another whispered that a child was born under strange stars, her life destined to bind those two families someday. Whether true or not, the rumors prove a deeper hunger, the need to believe that moments align not by chance, but by purpose. That time is not a river flowing blindly, but a thread weaving patterns too large for us to see. Some say the invisible hand was not accident, but design. That time itself tests its limits, experimenting with pauses, rehearsing endings. Others believe it is the echo of lives connected in ways we cannot yet measure, that one family's silence became another's shadow, and the clocks only marked what the heart already knew. And still others whisper of simulation, of code that occasionally halts in mirrored errors, leaving us with frozen machines as traces of the glitch. Whatever the truth, the hourglass alignment remains. Two clocks, two strangers, 1 second, frozen forever. A moment where time's grip loosened and the world revealed its fragility. So, the next time a clock stops in your home, do not dismiss it as failure. Look closer. Ask yourself, who else, somewhere beyond your knowing, has paused with you? Whose life has been branded with the same silence? For time does not only pass, it aligns. And when it does, we glimpse the invisible hand, reminding us that hours are not cages, but echoes. And sometimes, across distance, two lives are bound forever by the same frozen second. Sleepless Awakening, you woke in darkness. No dream to explain it, no sound to rattle you awake. Just eyes snapping open, lungs tightening, and the sick awareness that it was 3:33 a.m. You stared at the glowing digits on the clock, and for a moment you thought it was only you, that your solitude was absolute. But elsewhere, under countless different roofs, in different languages, in different lives, others stirred awake at the very same instant. Some reached for water, some sat upright in panic, some simply lay frozen, whispering prayers into the dark. None of them knew that they were not alone. Why does this happen? Why does a number, a time, repeat itself with such uncanny consistency? You can call it biology, the shifting rhythms of sleep, the cycle of hormones that pulls bodies into restless waking. You can call it coincidence, the mind-hunting patterns where none exist. And yet, the body knows better. To wake at 3:33 is to feel marked, chosen, haunted. It feels less like restlessness and more like being summoned. For centuries, people have spoken of the witching hour, the time when the veil between worlds thins, when spirits and shadows move freely. In old villages, 3 a.m. was the hour of prayer, of vigil, of protection. The devout lit candles to ward off whatever prowled the silence. Doctors, centuries later, noted the uncanny rise of deaths in hospitals between 3 and 4 a.m., when the body's defenses are at their lowest. Paramedics still call it the dead zone of the night. Science tries to explain it in charts, but the dread you feel is older, deeper. Imagine those countless others rising with you in that moment. A mother in Tokyo, clutching her chest. A man in Cairo, trembling for no reason. A child in Sao Paulo, certain that someone is standing in their room. None of them know your face, and yet you are bound together by that time. The fear is communal, though each believes it is private. You are alone, yet not alone. A global chorus of awakening, uncoordinated but synchronized, echoing in silence across the planet. Is it possible that time itself is the messenger? That 3:33 is not random, but chosen, a point where the clock's symmetry becomes a doorway. Repeating numbers have always haunted us. 11:11, 2:22, 4:44. We notice them, feel them, imbue them with meaning, but 3:33 carries something heavier. 3. The Trinity. The pattern of beginning, middle, end. Doubled, tripled, mirrored. To wake at that hour is to feel caught in a pattern too precise to ignore. Some will tell you it is anxiety, a mind rehearsing its fears in the silence. Others will insist it is spiritual, that something in the dark touched you awake. But what matters is not the reason. It is the fact that across the world, countless others woke with you. They too checked the clock. They too felt the chill. They too lay wondering why. And in that, you are joined to them by a thread invisible but unbreakable. History whispers that collective awakenings matter. Entire monasteries once rang bells at fixed hours, believing prayer at the same moment united them across distance. Prophets claimed that to rise at the appointed time was to hear the call of heaven. Skeptics dismissed it all as tricks of the mind, but the experience remained. Across centuries, the hour between 3 and 4 has been marked, feared, sanctified. You have stepped into that lineage, whether you wanted to or not. Tomorrow, you will forget. You will dismiss it as nothing, another restless night. But somewhere else, someone will wake at the same moment again. Perhaps it will be you. Perhaps it will be another. And slowly, silently, a web of awakenings will continue to knit itself across the globe, linking strangers who will never meet but who share the same fear in the same second. What does it mean that we rise together, hearts racing, under the symmetry of a number glowing in the dark? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Maybe it is the universe reminding us that our lives, no matter how solitary, still pulse in rhythm with others. That fear is communal, that silence is shared, that even the darkest hour is never faced alone. Because once, you awoke at 3:33 a.m., and so did countless others, in cities and villages, in towers and shacks, all rising with you into the same mystery. Whispering leaves. You were walking beneath the trees when it happened. A rustle stirred in the branches overhead, the kind of sound so ordinary that most people would dismiss it as nothing more than wind shifting through leaves. Yet something about it made you pause. The sound felt alive, intentional, as though the trees themselves were whispering in a language older than speech. You stood still, listening, and for a moment you could have sworn the rustle shaped itself into a rhythm, a cadence almost like a name, yours. You shook it off, perhaps, a trick of the ear, the mind weaving meaning from chance. And yet, at that same moment, far away across mountains and seas, another person stood in their own forest, listening to their own trees. The wind moved differently there, the leaves belonged to other species, the air smelled of another land entirely. But when the branches stirred, they too paused, and in the rustle, they swore they heard a name, your name. Neither of you would ever know the other. Neither would ever confirm that the experience had been shared. But the wind had braided your moments together, a connection invisible, inaudible except in memory, carrying sound across distances not through air, but through some deeper fabric of being. You thought it was only wind. They thought it was only dream. But the trees knew otherwise. What does it mean for your name to be carried in the mouth of the world itself? A name is more than sound. It is a vessel of identity, the thread that ties memory to presence. When the forest seems to speak it, it is as though the earth itself is calling you back to attention, reminding you that you are seen, even when alone. And what does it mean that another, a stranger across the globe, heard that same name? Perhaps it means names are not possessions, but echoes. Perhaps they belong not only to us, but to the air, to the soil, to the hidden symphony of existence that connects one soul to another. Ancient peoples believed the wind was not empty. To the Greeks, it was the breath of gods. To the Norse, it was the voice of wandering spirits. To countless cultures, the rustle of leaves was never meaningless. It was the conversation of the unseen. When shamans or mystics walked through the forest, they stopped and listened, knowing that wisdom could arrive disguised as mere sound. Perhaps, unknowingly, you stepped into that same lineage when you paused beneath those trees. Perhaps you, like them, were listening to a truth that does not shout, but whispers. And here is the strange beauty. What is mere coincidence to you may be destiny to someone else. For that stranger who swore they heard your name in the leaves, it became proof. Proof that they were not imagining their longing. Proof that somewhere beyond their reach lived the one they were waiting for. They built meaning around it, carried it like a compass, and you, unaware, became part of their story. A presence confirmed by the wind itself. We tend to believe our lives are separate, our experiences private, our senses ours alone. But moments like these hint at something larger. That consciousness may not be sealed in skin. That memory may not belong only to the mind. What if sound, like thought, can cross boundaries we do not see? What if the rustling leaves are not only random motion, but the medium of a hidden dialogue between souls? You did not hear the stranger's name, but they heard yours. And in hearing, they carried you with them. Perhaps they began to look for signs of you in their world. The echo of your syllables in birdsong, in rivers, in conversations overheard. Perhaps they began to wonder not if you existed, but where you were. And though they may never find you, the certainty that you are real has already reshaped them. They live now with proof that connection is not bound by distance, that the earth itself conspires to remind us we are not alone. And you may not remember the rustle. It was just another walk, another day, another sound half lost to memory. Yet even in forgetting, you remain part of the story, because somewhere, someone has not forgotten. Somewhere, someone still remembers the exact moment the wind spoke your name, and they carry you as part of their truth. So the next time you hear leaves whispering, pause. Do not dismiss it too quickly. Perhaps it is only the wind, or perhaps it is more, a voice not yet translated, a reminder that across the distance of oceans and continents, someone else may be listening too. Someone who hears in that rustle not randomness, but recognition. And maybe that is what the world has been trying to tell us all along, that even the smallest sounds can bind us, that even a rustle in the trees can become a bridge between strangers, and that sometimes, when we least expect it, the earth itself will speak our names into the air, carrying them farther than we will ever walk. Déjà vu across souls. It comes suddenly without warning, the strange ripple of recognition in a moment you know you should not know. A sentence spoken, the tilt of a hand, the way light slides across a room, and you feel it. Déjà vu. That eerie certainty that you have already lived this instant before, though reason insists it is impossible. Most brush it aside as a trick of memory, the brain misfiring, circuits looping for a breath too long. But what if déjà vu is not merely yours? What if, at the same moment you feel the tremor, another soul oceans away feels it too? On one quiet evening, in different time zones, two strangers paused. One stirred tea in a kitchen, the other unlocked a door in a dim hallway. Neither knew of the other's existence, yet both were struck at the exact same instant by the uncanny sense that this had all happened before. The sound of the spoon tapping porcelain, the shadow leaning across the door frame, both ordinary, both meaningless, yet somehow both carried the taste of repetition. And in that repetition, a shared shiver of recognition. Think of the odds. Déjà vu is private, intimate, born deep within the folds of the mind. Yet, here were two people, continents apart, struck by the same phantom feeling at the same heartbeat of time. Could it be coincidence? Or could it be that memory does not live only in the brain, but in some wider field, an ocean of experience through which we all drift? Perhaps déjà vu is not the recycling of your own past, but the momentary overlap of lives, a resonance like two strings plucked at once, humming the same note across distance. Ancient traditions hinted at this. Some said déjà vu was the soul remembering another life, a fracture in time where the past bleeds through. Others believed it to be proof of destiny, the mind catching a glimpse of the path ahead. But what if both are true in a stranger way? What if déjà vu is not about your life at all, but the echo of another's? You feel repetition because somewhere, someone else is living an almost identical moment. Your recognition is not personal memory. It is communion. Science, cautious and restrained, offers explanations. A hiccup in the temporal lobe, a brief lag in perception, where the brain files the present as the past. A system error in the machinery of awareness. Yet even science admits its answers are incomplete. It can explain the sensation, perhaps, but not the timing. Why two souls would feel the same ripple at the same moment, despite distance. That precision, that eerie synchronicity, suggests more than malfunction. It suggests connection. And maybe that is the truth hiding beneath this mystery, that our lives are not solitary reels unspooling in silence, but overlapping films, sometimes slipping into the same frame. When déjà vu strikes two souls at once, it may be a reminder that memory itself is not sealed, that consciousness bleeds across borders, that what feels private may in fact be shared. The two strangers will never meet. They will never compare notes. They will never know that on that evening, under different skies, they both paused in the same shadow of recognition. Yet something in them carries it still, that faint, unsettling certainty of repetition. Perhaps when they dream, their landscapes overlap. Perhaps when they speak, words arrive already familiar. Perhaps they are bound in ways they will never uncover. And that is the haunting beauty of déjà vu across souls. Proof, however fleeting, that experience is not confined, that our memories may belong to each other as much as they belong to us, that across oceans, across time zones, across the fragile borders of self, we are living lives that sometimes rhyme. The invisible handshake. Imagine your hand reaching out, almost instinctively, to steady yourself on a railing. Perhaps it's on a stairway, or the edge of a bridge, or the cool iron of a balcony. You aren't thinking about it. You simply place your palm down, grounding yourself in that simple, reassuring gesture. But at that same moment, somewhere across the world, a stranger does the exact same thing. Their hand finds its own railing, their body guided by the same unconscious impulse. Two hands, separated by oceans, land upon two pieces of metal at the same instant. They never touch, but the gesture is mirrored so perfectly, it feels like an invisible handshake. For a heartbeat, you and this stranger are joined. Not by sight, not by words, but by touch across distance. You never know them. They will never know you. And yet, in that moment, you shared the same gesture of grounding, the same fleeting contact with the world. Your hands were twins, pressing down against surfaces that became, for that instant, one bridge between you. It sounds like nothing, doesn't it? Just a coincidence. But the more you think about it, the more it becomes uncanny. Because how many times has your body acted in unison with another you'll never meet? How often do we walk, breathe, pause, reach, in mirrored rhythms with strangers across the globe? Perhaps far more than we realize. Life might be less individual than we believe, less like millions of separate stories and more like a single choreography playing out across distances. The invisible handshake is not about meeting, it is about resonance, about the way human beings, without knowing, mirror one another's smallest gestures. Scientists have long studied how people in the same room unconsciously synchronize, footsteps falling into step, blinks aligning, even heartbeats matching during conversation. But what if this doesn't stop at proximity? What if connection stretches farther, into unseen threads that bind us across continents? Your hand pressed metal. Theirs did too. In that instant, the same gesture crossed distance, as if you reached for each other through the bones of the world. There is something symbolic about the railing itself. A railing is meant to steady, to hold us back from falling. It is the architecture of trust, a small promise that the world won't let us slip. When you touched it, you reached for stability. When they touched theirs, they did too. And so, for one moment, you and the stranger shared the same silent need, the same human desire to be held against gravity. What you thought was a personal gesture was, in fact, a universal one. And maybe this is how connection really works. Not through grand encounters, but through tiny, invisible harmonies. A glance matched across cities. A laugh at the same absurd thought. A step forward as another steps back. You may never see the stranger, but your life brushed theirs anyway, in a rhythm you didn't choose. It is haunting, but also comforting. Because if we are all performing these mirrored gestures without knowing, then perhaps none of us are ever truly alone. Your invisible handshake with that stranger becomes proof that life is a woven fabric, each thread pulling on another. You thought you were steadying only yourself, but in truth, you were steadying each other. And maybe that is what it means to be human, not isolated, but endlessly connected by unseen echoes. Somewhere, right now, another hand is pressing against a railing in silence. And in that instant, you are not separate lives, but reflections in the same gesture, joined across distance by the invisible handshake. Rivers shared flow. They called it the river's shared flow, though no map could capture it. Imagine standing by a riverbank, the water rising higher than it should, its surface trembling with unseen pressure. You tell yourself it is rain upstream, a storm too distant to hear. And yet, on that same day, thousands of miles away, another river, one you've never seen in a land you may never touch, overflowed its banks too. Not because of local storms, not because of seasonal floods, but in perfect synchrony with yours. Two rivers, continents apart, responding as though they shared a pulse, as though some hidden tide beneath the earth had whispered to them both, now. To those who stood beside each river, the floods felt local, natural, explainable. Farmers cursed their drowned fields, families stacked sandbags against doorways. Children watched fish swim in streets that should never have seen water. But satellites, scanning the planet, noticed the truth. The two rivers had swollen in the same rhythm, rising and cresting together, though their skies told different stories. Science shrugged, noting atmospheric anomalies, subtle tremors, unseen ocean currents. But to the people who remembered, it felt like something stranger, as if the rivers had spoken across distance, carrying one another's grief. For rivers are not just water, they are memory. They remember glaciers long melted, rains long forgotten, civilizations long buried. They carve valleys not only into stone, but into culture, binding human lives to their flow. When two rivers swell in synchrony, it is not only hydrology, it is history repeating itself in twin gestures. It is the earth reminding us that what we divide with maps is not always divided in truth. Think of it. Water evaporates from one ocean, drifts as clouds, falls as rain, seeps into soil, joins rivers, moves again to the sea. Every drop in every river has been elsewhere. Inside mountains, inside clouds, inside the blood of animals. Perhaps the rivers swelled together because, at some ancient time, they had been one. Perhaps they remembered each other in ways we cannot. But the story carries weight beyond water. When two rivers flood in unison, the lives they touch begin to echo. A farmer in one country wades knee-deep in ruined crops, while, at the same hour, another farmer half a world away does the same. Neither will ever meet. But both curse the water, both feel the despair of labor undone. A child in one village clings to a rooftop, while another child elsewhere does the same. To the rivers, these lives are not separate. They are one flow, one current, one story carried forward in water. And isn't this true of us all? Our griefs, our joys, our struggles, we believe they are ours alone, contained within the borders of our lives. But often, elsewhere, someone is living the same rhythm, rising and overflowing at the same moment. You may think your heartbreak is solitary, but somewhere, another heart cracks in perfect synchrony. You may believe your triumph is unique, but another cheer rises at the same second. Like rivers, our lives swell together, fed by tides we do not see. Some whisper that the shared flow is not coincidence, but a message, that beneath the crust of the earth lies a hidden tide, a pulse of molten rhythm that pulls rivers into alignment. Others believe it is a memory of the planet itself, an ancient flood repeating across centuries, rippling outward through time. And still others, in darker tones, call it simulation error, that the world occasionally forgets to separate its variables, and distant rivers glitch into the same motion, betraying their code. Whatever the truth, the rivers do not explain. They only rise, they only fall, they only carry with them the bones of fish, the silt of centuries, the whispers of lives they drown and sustain. Their shared flood remains as proof that water does not obey borders, and time does not obey separation. When the floods receded, families rebuilt, forgetting the synchrony. The farmers returned to their fields, the children to their play, the cities to their rhythm. But somewhere, in satellite archives, and in whispers passed down by those who watch too closely, the story endures. Two rivers, strangers to each other, breathing in the same lung. So the next time you stand by water and watch it rise, ask yourself, who else, far away, is watching their banks swell at the same moment? Who else is bracing against a tide that matches yours, though their river has never known your name? For the river's shared flow is more than flood. It is reminder that nothing moves alone, that water, like grief, like joy, is always part of a hidden tide, and that when the earth exhales, even rivers on opposite sides of the world can overflow as one. The silent note. It began with a single touch, a finger pressing gently against ivory, a key sinking into felt and wire. The sound rose in one room, familiar and small, vibrating through wood and air. But at that very same instant, on the other side of the planet, in another studio, another piano hummed faintly, though no hand had touched it. A ghostly resonance, a whisper of vibration, as though the note had crossed oceans to remind someone that music does not belong to one place alone. You tell yourself it's impossible. That sound cannot travel that far. That one piano cannot awaken another. And yet, in that instant, the world was not measured in distance, but in timing. Two instruments became entangled through coincidence, or through something greater. A note born in one country was echoed in another, and two strangers who would never meet were bound by a tone neither of them could explain. Music has always carried this mystery. To strike a key is to summon invisible architecture, waves rushing through air, frequencies weaving unseen patterns. We cannot touch them, but they move us more deeply than stone, and sometimes they move beyond us. Instruments left in silence have been known to resonate when their twins are played elsewhere, strings vibrating in sympathy, as though remembering the song themselves. Scientists call it resonance, musicians call it magic. Both are true. So imagine that instant, your key pressed, their piano stirred, two studios became one space, folded into each other by the persistence of harmony. They froze, hearing the faint hum, glancing at the instrument as if it had spoken. You did not hear them, but you felt the weight of the note linger longer than it should have. Two lives, separated by oceans, caught inside the same vibration. Is it chance? Or is it proof that sound itself is a kind of thread weaving us together? Every frequency repeats, echoes, rebounds. A whisper in one place may carry in the bones of another. A note pressed here may ripple through the air until it finds a place to rest. Perhaps pianos themselves are conspirators in this mystery, their wood and wire remembering every song ever played, waiting to respond when the universe calls its twin. Think of the history of music and its strange power. Monks chanting in stone halls believed their voices echoed into heaven. Shamans drummed rhythms to summon the spirits of wind and rain. Even today, people speak of music they feel in their bones, as though the body itself is an instrument waiting to be played. So what does it mean that your note became someone else's hum? Maybe it was not just physics. Maybe it was a reminder that music is never solitary. Every sound we create belongs not just to us, but to the world. And what of the stranger in that other studio? They may have told no one, dismissing it as imagination. Or they may have carried it for years, wondering about the phantom note that answered them in silence. Perhaps they even struck the same key in return, sending their own resonance into the air, hoping it might reach you. Two players, unknown to each other, creating a duet across distance without ever sharing a stage. That is the secret beauty of resonance. It refuses separation. Strike a string, and others will join. Speak a word, and echoes will find it. Play a note, and somewhere, something will hum in answer. Perhaps the universe itself is built on this principle. Nothing exists alone. Every action hums in the bones of something else, whether we hear it or not. So the next time you sit before a piano, press a key and let it linger. Remember that the sound does not end in your room. It carries, it resonates, it waits for an answer. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere else, someone will hear a faint hum in their own silence and wonder who called them. Because once you pressed a piano key, and at the very same instant, another piano across the world hummed in reply. The endless echo. You spoke into the dark one night. Perhaps it was no more than a murmur, a thought too heavy to keep inside, or a question you never expected an answer to. Your voice barely rose above a whisper, the syllables dissolving into the stillness of the room. You believed no one would ever hear them. And yet, somewhere across the world, at that very moment, another mouth formed the same words in the same rhythm, carried not by sound waves, but by an unseen current. It felt to them like an echo, though they had spoken first, or maybe second. The order didn't matter. What mattered was the rhythm, the uncanny alignment of breaths, the identical cadence that made your words indistinguishable from theirs. Neither of you knew it, but the universe had braided your voices together, weaving your whispers into one endless thread. What does it mean when words do not belong to one speaker alone, when they rise in two places at once, as though language itself is not born from us, but passes through us, looking for vessels? The endless echo suggests that speech is not a possession, but a current, that when we open our mouths in solitude, we may be joining a chorus that stretches across oceans, across dimensions, across the unmeasured fabric of existence. Think of the words you chose that night. Perhaps they were words of longing, whispered into the dark like a prayer. Perhaps they were words of anger, sharp and trembling with the weight of silence. Or perhaps they were words of love, fragile and trembling, offered to no one but yourself. Whatever they were, someone else was speaking them too, and that stranger, far away, felt less alone for reasons they could not explain. They thought their whisper was answered, though they never heard yours. They thought the air itself had carried their voice back to them, and they built their certainty on that moment, that even in darkness they were not unseen, not unheard. History is full of echoes like this. Two poets, continents apart, writing the same verse. Two scientists, decades apart, speaking the same discovery. Two lovers, miles apart, whispering each other's names at the same hour without knowing why. We call it coincidence. We call it synchronicity. But what if it is more? What if all speech is part of a greater river, each of us dipping our hands into its waters, pulling out the same words at different shores? You thought your whisper vanished, but in another world, it was preserved. It entered their memory, their myth, their lineage. Generations later, children grew up hearing the story of the night the air itself spoke back, carrying words no one could trace. And though your name was lost, the rhythm remained. Your voice lived on, immortal in the endless echo. Consider how fragile sound is. A whisper fades in seconds. A word spoken in solitude should die the moment it leaves the lips. And yet, across time and distance, those words live again, repeated, renewed. How many times have you yourself spoken thoughts you believed were yours alone, only to find they had already been spoken, centuries before, by others who shared your heart? How many words that feel private are, in truth, ancient echoes returning through you? There is comfort in this, that we are not as solitary as we think. That when we speak in the dark, we may be answered not in the way we expect, but in the rhythm of another voice carried on unseen currents. That the loneliness of language is an illusion, and the truth is that our voices are always braided with others. But there is also unease, because if words belong not to us, but to the current, then how much of what we say is truly ours? How many of our confessions, our cries, our vows are only repetitions, endless echoes of something greater than us, flowing through countless mouths across countless nights? Perhaps originality is only another word for forgetting the source. Perhaps every whisper we think is ours is the voice of eternity, reminding itself that it is still alive. The stranger who spoke your words never knew you. They never knew the shape of your mouth, the cadence of your breath. Yet, they lived by the certainty that their whisper had been shared. They carried that night into their life like a secret compass, and when they taught their children to speak, they told them, words are never alone. Even when you whisper in solitude, someone somewhere is whispering with you. And you went on, never remembering what you said, never realizing it had mattered, but your words live still. Not on a page, not in a recording, but in the resonance that binds voices across worlds. You are part of a sentence that will never end, spoken and respoken, whispered and returned, circling like tides. You began it without knowing. They continued it without knowing. And the echo has not yet stopped. So the next time you find yourself speaking into the dark, remember this. Silence is never truly empty. Words travel farther than breath, farther than sound. They enter the endless current, where strangers and ancestors and descendants all speak together in voices that overlap. And perhaps, at that very moment, someone far away will pause in their own solitude, feeling less alone, because they will hear your whisper in the rustle of the air and believe it is their own. The echo will carry you both, and it will never end.